I'll play it right now. That's what I'll do. Greetings, welcome, and salutations. Welcome all to the Xbox Expansion Pass, and welcome to our spoiler-filled discussion of Obsidian's Avowed. I'm your host, Luke Lohr, the Insipid Ghost, and I welcome you here to our discussion with the full-on warning that we're going to be talking about Avowed's story, its worlds, its enemies, in a full spoiler mode. So please, if that's not for you, put a pin in this episode, come back to it later after you've enjoyed the story, gotten mad at the story, whatever it might be. I am indeed joined by three fantastic people tonight, each of whom have completed the game with over 50 hours played and then some. I am joined by one Captain Logan, the Intrepid Man. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited about this. I've been ready for this for like 3 days. I've been stoked here.
Yeah.
We're also joined by the man with the million, Mr. Rand al Thor 19. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. Thanks for the invite to talk about Avowed. I never really do these spoiler cast things, so I kind of want to see what you guys have to say about the game.
I'm stoked that you are here for this conversation, because this world is just worth debating and discussing. And of course, rounding out our quartet here is Tie Guy Travis of IGN. Travis, you are the only one of us that gave the game a score, I believe. Nice. I think Rand and I were very high on the game. Captain Logan very high on it. You had to give it 1 for IGN, and you landed on a 7. Good. I loved your review, Rand. I loved your video. I hope people check out the XEP review. All those links are in the show notes.
Technically, I did give it a score. I gave it a score, but at the end.
Did you?
Yeah.
At
the very end, I gave it a score.
What was your score?
Gave it. I was thinking I gave it an 8. So I'm a single point higher than you.
I could see an 8.
I could see a 7, honestly.
That's interesting. I'm gonna jump right in. Travis, I watched your review. I listened to the arguments that you made for it, and I honestly couldn't find fault in any of your points. I have heard that you've talked a little bit about how you wavered between a 7 and 8. Is there credence to those rumors?
No, not really. I was pretty set on a 7. I mean, if you read the IGN description of a 7, it is like Avowed to a T. It's like literally fits the exact thing. I'll pull it up here in a sec when we get to it. But 7 is not bad. And I kind of did an impromptu Q&A on Reddit because people were asking about the review. Like, hey, it's kind of hard to understand why people give games certain scores. And so I just popped in there and was like, look, an Obsidian 7 is like time well spent. That's like a good game. It just means, maybe it's not the most ambitious. Maybe it's not going to surprise you. Maybe it's got a couple flaws here and there, some technical issues, all that stuff. But like the idea that it is a negative review is, I just want to push back on that at every single opportunity I can get, because anybody who knows my reviews knows I do give low scores quite often, actually. And I'm not afraid to say if I think a game is actually bad. And I don't think Avowed is bad at all. I think it is a flawed but worthwhile game that I would recommend to people who like fantasy open world RPGs, especially if you like Obsidian or the Pillars universe. So that's where I landed on it.
I appreciate that, because I think that's one of the things that a lot of people will look at the score and just assume that is where a lot of people expect scores to be hitting nowadays. And I think that's just in nature due to how many games come out and having time really just to dedicate to the games that look like they're at least going to be above a 6. So I appreciate knowing like the reason you were with a 7 was because that's where you felt it was, and not because there wasn't a half point system. Something we discussed on the last XEP. And I know you guys talked about review scores and stuff on Bitcast this weekend as well too.
I think some people get it in their heads that a game is only worth their time if it's going to be like a 9 or a 10, especially in the AAA space. I see a lot of like, I'm expecting it to be amazing. So if it's anything less than a perfect game, then I'm not going to play it. And I just think that argument doesn't really hold water, because 7s are fun. Sometimes they're interesting in some in a way that maybe you don't get with a more polished game. I've certainly played like Earth Defense Force comes to mind as like a game that's maybe not the most polished, but you can't play another game like it. It's just sort of a weird, unique experience. And also, I think that there's some like jockeying. People want to kick a game or a studio if it doesn't get the best scores in the world. If it doesn't get 10s, then maybe PlayStation fans will come in and say, oh, look at that, and they like to laugh and kind of talk down to certain games, and you see that on the other side as well. So I think there's partially emotions, partially people just not understanding the review system that we have at IGN or elsewhere, and partially people being kind of bad faith actors. But there's a lot of reasons, a lot of noise. But I think most people, if you read the text of my review, I don't think you would leave thinking that I didn't enjoy the game. I think you would had issues with it here and there, but that largely like it. I'm recommending the game, and in fact, in the summary paragraph, I say like I had fun with this game, and I think you will too. Like that is a quote, I believe, from the end of my review. So that's what I have to say on the score in general.
Awesome. I wanted to toss it over to Luke or Rand just to kind of get your guys' thoughts. I always want to, like, especially with Spoilercast, after we've kind of like talked about like what our review is. When I look at reviews, I tend to look at reviews from the lens of, am I reviewing something based on what I expected it to be or how it compares to other games? And if that's and looking at that as not necessarily the right way to approach a game. When I want to approach a game, I want to think about, what is this game doing? What is it trying to accomplish? And how well do they accomplish that? When you guys look at reviews for a game, what is your kind of approach to that before we get into spoilers? Because I'm hoping to get people like, if they're listening to this, hopefully they won't be listening to this without realizing that this is going to be full of spoilers. So when you approach a game, do you approach a game based on what it is or how it compares to others, or a blend of the two?
Rand, you go first on this one.
I guess it's a blend of the two. Like, I know it's different for someone like Travis who works for a publication that has like a set standard of like, this is what it is. So like for me, like my reviews are just kind of like of the game itself, but then comparisons of other things. Like in my mind, it's like, okay, this is a 9 or this is a 10. What other games would I have rated 9s or 10s? And does this game reach those levels? And if it does, gets that score, and then like, I don't know, I guess like there's an issue with Avowed here in particular about, I think I mentioned in my review that I didn't like the fact that your main character wasn't voiced.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't dock the game for it, right? It was just I'd said like, maybe if it was voiced, it could have taken the next step. It could have been higher, because I could have been like, oh man, because some of the dialogue choices, like I just think in my head like, oh, this would have been really cool to hear with the professional voice actor, with the joy or the anger, but I wouldn't dock the game for being something it wasn't intending to be, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a mixture of all those different things, at least for me. But I'm just a lowly YouTuber, so my opinion is just how I feel about something, really.
Everybody's opinion is just how they feel about something.
Yeah, but I mean, I know, but for you kind of you have the IGN system editor. You have to work within. So, it's a little bit more freeform if it's just you, and I don't have a boss, so
I actually don't think that that's bad. IGN's style guide says like our goal is to sound like a friend on a couch rather than professor video game. And so I think shooting from the hip and not necessarily being the most polished isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think that should be one of the goals of a review, is to come off like a friend, just a peer giving a recommendation, which is what I consider myself to the people reading my reviews.
That's actually really interesting, because I can see that mentality behind a lot of what IGN does and the stuff that they do. It really, especially with the podcast, it always feels like they're just a couple of people hanging out on the couch talking about some of the games that they love.
Yeah.
I think that that's at odds though with the having to put a review on there and having to give like definitive reasons and thoughts on it. And I think that's why there is heat that gets sent to your way, or any way that any direction towards an outlet that has to contribute to a meta or open critic. Because in Rand's video, he just got to pour and gush over what he enjoyed most. You had to be more critical by the nature of giving the score to your outlet. And I felt like when I was doing this project, my review was based on approaching this game having never played an Obsidian game. So it was new to me, being enthralled and excited to play this game, but also as someone who's been covering the Xbox adjacent ecosystem for 5 years now, this is kind of one of the big ones. This is forgive the pun, a pillar name for them in terms of releases. And so I approached it in a different way, I think, than many people did. And I think is the onus is on anybody who's going to talk about a game to prep their audience for that. And I'm not sure everyone is successful in that, but it does lead to discussion, debate, frustration, people being pleased, etc.
Yeah. I don't think it's so much when you're working at a large outlet that you're forced to be critical. It's just that if you have an opinion, you are compelled to give reasons and to make a persuasive argument for why you feel that way or why you would recommend or not recommend it. And so it's just that there's more like pushing on you. Like if you think a game is amazing, it's like, okay, tell me exactly why. Provide specific examples, compare it to other games and that you think it is better at that then. Or if it's, if you're not giving it a high recommendation, why do you feel like it fell short, etc. And so I think there's more people like looking at your review before it goes live and like pushing you to be more specific and to be more persuasive, and that sort of thing. But I do want to answer Captain Logan's original question about, do I base a review off of other games or off of what I think it should be versus what the developers intended? Unfortunately, the only correct answer to that question is you have to base it off of what you think it should have been, because any shortcoming is an opinion of you saying, well, why didn't they do this instead? So it's not so much being like, what's a game that's shifted genres? Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. I hate it because it's a racing game and I'm going to give it a bad score just based on that. I would say that's a pretty crappy review, but because you just didn't want it to be there. But if you're playing an RPG and it doesn't have fast travel, and that was maybe a decision, but you hate that decision, you're allowed to say, I hate the part that it doesn't have fast travel. And that is essentially you saying, I wish it was a different game. Right. And so I think the problem with saying, well, I want to base it off of what the developers had in mind, is that you can use that to escape any criticism. Because what if the developer says, oh, well, we meant to create like a broken, technically crappy game that is unfinished. You can't judge us against anything because that's our definition of what success was. So I don't think you can allow the creator to set success parameters for you having fun, right? And so ultimately you have to be like, did I have fun? And if you did, then explain the reason why. And if you didn't, explain the reason why you didn't. And so you're always inserting yourself into the review. If it were possible to not do that, that would be ideal, but that's just not how art works. It's very subjective, and you kind of have to put your opinions and your personality into it. And the IGN style guide says, we're paying you for your opinion, so have lots of them, and every sentence should contain an opinion. And that is what we strive to do. And so I think you just lean into that, and then you make it very clear to anybody who has questions that is what a review is, because that there's a lot of people who don't live in this world and they don't know that a review is just somebody saying what they feel, which is basically what all reviews are. But it's not always intuitive to people that don't live in that world.
I got a question for you, Travis, because when I mentioned the character not being voiced, you definitely had like a visceral reaction, for lack of a better word. So when I said that I wouldn't dock him for it, but I also felt that if they did it, maybe I would have liked it more. Because I had this conversation with people while I was playing the game, other reviewers, and I brought that exact thing up about, like, I'm not really sure. I don't like the silent protagonist really at all, period. But they were like, oh, no, bro, this RPGs, they got, you has to be you, so that's why there's no voice. It ruined Fallout 4, blah, blah, blah. So, like, they were telling me this is what, and I'm not the biggest RPG player, right? They were telling me this is what RPG players expect, and this is the right choice for the game. So obviously, you, from what you just said, you sort of feel differently, right? Because you kind of related it to the fast travel system.
Them trying to hand wave your opinion, like their whole thing that a silent protagonist is part of the RPG identity, is purely their opinion, and you can disagree that is the correct choice, or you can say, hey, just because it's always been true doesn't mean that it should be the way it is, right? Like, people do this with parts of genres I hate, like how in JRPGs a lot of them don't let you save wherever you want. You have to go and find a save point. And I go, it's so stupid. And then everybody goes, but it's part of the genre. And I go, well, maybe it shouldn't be. That's like totally a valid argument. Also, there's plenty of examples of RPGs where the player talks. Like Mass Effect is probably one of the most popular
Cyberpunk
RPGs
is the one I
ever.
just most recently played, and Cyberpunk would not nearly have been what it was if it was just a voiceless character.
So I think you can say, hey, I get that the developers prioritized wanting a silent protagonist so you could fill the shoes of the player and give it whatever voice you wanted. Totally understand that. But I think you personally can just say, I just don't like that. And that's not any less valid than any other review or opinion.
Okay. When you guys were creating your character, and let's go into the spoiler territory of this one. When you are creating your character, you kind of run that. I would argue it's a fairly standard gambit of create a character. You have some options, you have some stuff. You have to select a godlike or a look to yourself. You are a godlike, which means that you have a god that is. I don't want to say the word patron, but it feels like you have a patron god that blesses you or curses you according to your perspective there. And we don't find out until the end of the game the true nature, until the kind of the fifth of all the areas, what the true nature of the god was. And that god's name is Sapadal, or I pronounced it Sapadal. I don't know how you guys pronounced it, but what was your take on the god that was essentially patronizing, sponsoring you of it? Were you guys taken aback? Did you appreciate it? What was your take on that?
I can jump in. Yeah. I liked the premise of a god that is basically a baby and that you get to decide what type of god it is. I thought that was like immediately clear what I was doing at the beginning, even though they kind of tried to obfuscate it in a little bit of a weird, and like one of my criticisms of the game was like, you immediately know exactly what's happening. It's like, okay, that's my patron god. She clearly is trapped and doesn't know anything. And I'm going to determine what she's like. But I thought that was cool as a premise. I don't know that they always executed it in the best way, because there's a lot of opportunities where you don't really have a good, like, did you guys ever do this where you were talking to Sapadal and it's like, hey, here's 3 options and I hate all of them? Yes. Did you guys ever feel like that? Yeah, I felt like that a lot. And I was just like, God, why isn't there an option where like my character can understand that, like, what I understand as the player, that this is clearly a god who doesn't get it, and that you have an opportunity to be like their parent here and like teach them how to be a good person. And it felt like my character really wasn't getting that and like overreacting at every turn. It's like, come on, dude, they have unlimited power and they're an infant. Like, you have to look at it like that. So I felt like if they made it, I don't want to make it like black and white, because that's another pet peeve of mine, is if it's like there's the blue highlighted good answer and the red highlighted bad answer. Like, I don't want that, but I kind of wanted there to be a path where my character was as smart as I was as the player, because it felt like my character just didn't get it. It really bothered me. But I love the premise.
Yeah. You're right about the gray area though. And that did set back several of my conversations throughout the game, because like I could see in some quests, it was be a good guy, be a bad guy. But there were some where, very much to your point, like I wouldn't have said any of those things based on the way I've played the game so far. It didn't make sense.
Yeah. I think they were trying to make it so your character was emotional, and so you were getting all bad answers. But because your character is voiceless, it's really hard to come across as emotional when like your character is just like waiting to answer, just like staring, and you're like, okay, I got 3 answers. But to answer the question of like, did I like the idea? Yeah, I thought it was super cool. It's a good premise for a game. I thought the writing for the god and like making it clear right away, like what the vibe was of like Mother Nature and all that stuff, I thought that was really cool. And I there were moments where I was like, oh, I wish they would have hid the reveal better, or I wish that they would have communicated better the decisions I'm making. But overall, like on a premise level, I thought it was pretty strong.
Yeah, I mean, it was like Travis said, it was clear from the get-go what the ending of the game was going to be, what the choice was going to be. You were either this is a god, and the choice is going to be, do I set them free or do I kill them, essentially? Like, you knew that from like 5 hours in, like from the first time you talked to them. It's like, oh, I pretty much know exactly where this story leads. And, alongside like the idea of like, what do we do with the living lands? Are they going to be, You know, like, are they going to come under our rule, or are you going to, you know, so like some of the ending sequences were telegraphed pretty early on in the game. The thing with the god I thought was interesting, but I didn't know how much choice and consequence played a factor in it, was I like this idea of molding a young god into whatever like you wanted it to be, right? Like where it would tell you these stories and the memories that you would find, the ancient memories, and you sort of like shaped it with your responses of like what happened. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, oh man, if I wanted to like be, you know, like a renegade playthrough, you know, Mass Effect terms, is there a way I could, with these responses, I could shape the god into being this like vengeful deity? And I was just wondering how much of that would, I don't know, I haven't talked to anybody to know if that actually does happen, of how much your responses influence what the god talks about. Because I only played the game once, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, eventually, like, my choice was I kind of made the conscious decision, I'm going to free the god from the very beginning. It's like, I'm going to try to make my responses are going to be, okay, I'm going to show them that they were wrong for doing these things. And then you still get to the end and you can still sort of make the choice of, no, I'm going to kill you and absorb your power. So I just wonder if there was really any, if it was just kind of all for an illusionary, like just dialogue stuff, and not actually something that shaped how the god perceives the world. It was always just going to end up in that one way. I don't know if you guys had anything different. Was Sapadal, like, if you were mean to her, was she ended up being like really mean? I don't know how that all worked out.
It was tough to test. Okay. Yeah. It was tough to test, but I did beat the game and then go back to like a midpoint in the game and then try to like hard make the wrong decision at the end. And the only thing that really changed was dialogue and the ending cutscene. So I think you can I think they shove all the decisions at that ending slideshow that you get, which is actually kind of, you don't get to see it in the game, which obviously would have been the preference, but it is kind of a satisfying, like, oh, they wrapped up everything.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys gave Sapadal her body as well, but I did, and they had like a little
statue
section for that. Yeah,
that was cool. That was nice.
I thought there were some cool little Easter eggs there.
I didn't even have a chance for that, but I will tell you to answer like Rand's point of like consequences. Can you make it a vengeful god or whatnot? I was fearful of that because I was playing full Jedi, not Paragon Jedi. I was being a good dude the whole time, trying to be a good person, trying to really like make this matter. But because I had made a decision earlier in the game that saw Fior's Demel, I can't remember the name of it, one of the cities got burned and destroyed. I had made a decision where the Steel Garrote came in and just wiped out a city. And so for the rest of my game, that city is on fire. I was worried and concerned for the consequences that I would have for any decision after that. I didn't even realize Sapadal was a baby until the latter portions of the game, because I was so conscious of being good so that another city or group wouldn't get destroyed.
Got it. Well, that one, it's not even about being good. It's just about doing the side quest where you kill them first, which I did on accident. I like walked into a cave and killed a bunch, and then they were like, "Oh, you found them and destroyed them early." And I was like, "I did? Okay, I did not know that."
See, I walked in and I just turned around and left when I talked to him.
Yep.
And like Luke, my city. Well, because I hadn't completed the traitor storyline yet, so I didn't know. I had stumbled across that because I was looking for the treasure map that's right over there, right? So when I talked to him, I just left. And so when the chapter completed and the city's burning, I was like, okay. And then you have to make the choice of like, where should we go? Thirdborn or Paradis for the surviving people? So after I beat the game, I had a save. I loaded it up. I completed the quest, and then they told me, oh, they're in the waterfall area. I went there, killed everybody, and then when I came back out of the area, they were like, oh, the city's burning. So we went back, and I'm like, okay, how much is this going to change? Because this is a big thing here, right? And so you actually go back into the city, and I'm like, okay, well, this is different. Like, the city's still here. But then you still have to make the choice of sending them to Thirdborn or Paradis. So, like, it still ends up in the same place.
Yeah, they kind of give you a different path at the end of each act. And the decisions are meaningful, but you only deal with them in, like, retrospect. Like, I don't know if you guys killed all the people in the desert area where, like, you can You can like
So
Thanos.
You side
snap
with the
half
arch. You
people
side
to
with the
death.
archmage. I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you side with the archmage, you Thanos snap like a third of the people dead, and then like you kind of see some people that are like pissed off at you, but then they quickly like rush you out to the next area, and then you only hear about it later.
Yells at you for like 5 minutes.
Kai does yell
and then
at
he's
you,
and then he's your bro. So it's all good.
He's totally fine with it. Yeah, the I was really hoping that there would be a part where some of my party members would peel off if I kept going down the path.
Yeah.
but
Well, they
didn't.
do.
Yeah.
They do.
Not till
They
the
can.
end.
Really?
Not to the very, very
They
end.
don't
If
peel
you,
off to the end. They should have peeled off at various
Yes.
points, I felt like, to give
Mhm.
gravity.
Really, you
like
guys
when-
lost party members. Huh? I tried to do it. and
you
could
can
not
lose them all.
believe.
I
You
went
can
back
lose
and
them
I
all.
did
The
it,
game-
but you can lose
yeah.
them all.
Yeah, I beat the game normal, but you can go back. And like I went back to the just prior to like your final ending area,
Mhm.
and just to see what happened chose to be mean, and they all left.
So what were you mean to, like, when they get mad
You-
at you?
When
at
you
the
when
end?
you're
end
talking
up
to all the
siding
leaders,
with,
if you
Oh,
side
that
with the steel
part.
Garrote, when you're
That's
talking to all the world
crazy.
leaders, they'll all just leave. It'll just be
I
like
never even
Kaya's left
thought
the
to
party.
do that,
They've
even
left
during
the
my
party.
mini playthrough.
So
didn't
basically,
even
you have to
think
fight
about it.
Ludwin in that whole Paradis battle by yourself.
it's
That's
actually an achievement to side with her at the very
That's
end there. Too.
Really?
That's
Yeah.
why I went back to get the other achievements. That's right.
Wait, so you guys were earning achievements on this? Because
Yeah.
I thought you guys had review copies. So because
I did.
Well, booted it back up.
So if you boot back up,
no.
Travis, they all pop. And so
oh shit, I need to do that.
Yeah.
it said that once the people that paid the extra
Yeah.
could
Yeah,
get in,
the early access.
yeah, for the thank you
Right.
early access is the words I wanted. Then you can go back and they all kind of pop retroactively. But I did have to beat the game again for that one to activate. So
Oh,
like,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah,
Logan,
I was just like, I guess I'm gonna have no achievements in this game. I beat was my
Yeah,
I just
50 some odd
accepted it.
hours.
Yeah.
No, just go back in and boot up because the way they did it, it
Yeah.
popped over.
Cool,
Logan,
good to know.
you wanted to jump in when you talked about the like finding the people in the cave.
Oh, well, I'll kind of go back a little bit to talk on Sapadal or Sappy. I appreciated what they did with that. I agree with you guys that it was really kind of upfront, like, hey, this is a god that is very new, very young, doesn't understand. And after I kind of understood like the perspectives of like what's going, like obviously like the tantrum murdered a lot of innocents, and that was in response to Woedica. But there were so many points where I ran into situations where I was pissed off at Sappy for what she did. But I also, Sappy. It's Sapadal. I don't know, just sappy in my mind. But that was like the idea of like, okay, I understand why you're doing this, but there has to be like a course correction. So every opportunity they gave me to like course correct the god, I went and I took that choice, because there was points where I was like, okay, I'm going to free the god. And then halfway through the game, I'm like, no, I'm going to kill the god. And then right at the very end,
Really?
yeah, at the very
Because
like
they
halfway
push on
through-
you pretty hard in the third act. They like
Mhm.
they show like like her previous patrons are like, no, kill her. She's super evil.
Yeah.
Don't believe her
Mhm.
lies. And you're like, for a second, I was like, and then I was like, people change, you know?
Yeah.
Just like, it's
Yeah.
like, nah, I'm gonna ignore
So-
you.
Well, one of the things that that kind of swayed me was collecting the totems and all the fragments, and you get the little bit of lore when you get each full like totem. And I was like listening to the gods talk about this new god, and I was like, oh, that kind of would be dangerous. You know, they have no way to control it. You know, and the conversation you have with Woedica through the robot that I'm forgetting what it's called. That was a pretty impactful one for me as well too. But the steel garrote situation was interesting because I was just running through. I spent 19 hours in the first zone. I was just clearing everything. I had so much fun just wandering around through the world and finding little points of interest and figuring out like how to uncover the map and listening for.
Is there really 19 hours of stuff to do in that first zone?
I went back later because I was still
Okay.
trying to figure out like a couple pieces for the totem.
Oh,
And
the totem.
I was running around and I legit still found things that I was like, they must have spawned this, because I could have swore I went
They
over
don't.
here.
They
No.
But that was, I know, and
They
that's the weird thing is I was like, dude, I'm still like running into stuff that I didn't find in like the 19 hours I spent in the first zone. But when I first came across that cave, I realized it was the steel garrote, and I was like, okay, well, I don't want to cause any issues right now. So I snuck around and I grabbed all the little treasure chests, and then I left. And then later on, I came into the trader line storyline, and then I was like, oh, well, I mean, if I'm just going to get permission, then I'm just going to go murder all them because this is clearly what I need to go do. And that was when I found out that I was actually going to save the town from and then as soon as I got out, they're like, don't know why these guys didn't show up with more stuff, but boy, I'm glad they didn't. And I was like, oh, hi, that was me.
Yeah. I didn't even wait for a quest to tell me to do it. I just walked in. I was like, oh, these bitches, you're dead. I pulled out my sword. We're going. I'm going to sling some spells at you.
I don't even remember that as a possibility.
You
That's
can miss it.
Part.
You can miss the cave entirely. Yeah.
I think I did. Because all of a sudden the city's burning is how it felt to me. And I was just like, whoa. That
one's pretty cool in that it's hidden behind, you have to go into a little spy. You're trying to find the snitch, and there's somebody who's who betrayed the city. And you can totally miss it and then just not even know why the attack happened. But they do leave breadcrumbs. They mention that the steel garrote had been seen nearby and that they're maybe planning an attack. And so they kind of give you hints, but that was one of those things where just like you, I did it, and then afterward I had no idea. I just changed the course of that decision, and then when I showed up and they were like, well, that was an easy fight to win, I was like, oh, hey, that was me. I did that. I just did it because I wanted to be a jerk, but that was cool.
But how do you feel about the fact that in reality it didn't change anything, because no matter what happens, whether you save the town or it burns, you still have to send them to either Shatterscarp or Paradis. So nothing, it didn't change anything really.
The decisions in the whole game are pretty shallow, and the world feels incredibly static no matter what you do. The fact that when you're in towns, the state really doesn't change. The biggest change was when I Thanos snapped, and then some of the people that were around were dead, but that was pretty minor considering that they only killed the unnamed guards and stuff. It was nobody that was attached to a quest line.
Can you imagine if they killed one of your companions when you did
that?
That's
what I wanted to happen.
Yeah,
that's what I was afraid of.
Also, that decision was the weirdest decision in the game. Can we agree on that? Because I was very unclear, what the okay, you need to destroy this temple or kill a bunch of people, and both of them might not solve the problem. It was just such an opaque decision. I felt very unqualified to be making it. I was like, can we get an expert in here? I don't want to believe the Woedica psychopath, but also this wizard is a psychopath too. This seems really bad.
Yeah. Well, especially if you're planning on releasing Sapadal at the end, where she cleanses the Dream Scourge anyways. So siding with the Archmage to kill some people to stop it is kind of reductive, because you're just going to release her and she's going to clear it up. So,
but if you side with Ludwin, I forget her name. If you side with her, you're awful. Yeah, that's clearly terrible.
Now, see, that's the thing. So I would like for you guys to give your reasons for this, because I'm very interested, because this was a really hard decision for me. I went with the Woedica skeleton, or Skeletor babe, because in my mind I was thinking, okay, if the Dream Scourge is going to be continued regardless, if we cut off the essence in this area, it is only covering this area, and we have to sacrifice a bunch of innocent lives for this, I don't understand why I wouldn't give that same opportunity to the innocent people by allowing them to choose to either fight or run away. And if it's not going to guarantee that the Dream Scourge is taken care of for all of the zones, then there's no point in just saving one zone, because it's going to eventually come in anyway. So if I destroy the ruins, it'll slow them down, but that doesn't change the fact that more would come in from the other zones as well. So I would rather have the innocents saved instead of killing them without them ever having an opportunity to choose. And my fear is that I was going to lose someone that was close to me, and I was like, well, I don't want to lose someone. How crappy would it be if the Archmage used this finger snap and took out Kai or someone? It would have been really, really annoying. I would have probably save scummed it at that point. But what was your guys' reasons for in that choice, and what did you go with?
She's a skeleton. She's evil. I'm not gonna side with her.
But that wizard was evil as hell too. She
was, but way more attractive. No, I honestly, it was just the idea of siding with this person I've seen be awful versus one that probably is awful. You know what I mean?
She's
Like,
clearly a sociopath, though.
Yeah.
well, she's a god.
they're both
Gods don't worry
sociopaths.
about ants they stepped on. Like,
She's not a god. She's just
up
someone
there.
who's
Come
she's
on, now.
immortal. She's an
Yeah,
immortal.
she's immortal.
I don't know what
immortals
you
aren't
got
gods,
about it.
though.
On a long enough
Let's be honest.
timeline, the lifespan of everyone is 0. Like, that's just the idea, right? So, like, to her, the world doesn't operate on the same like concerns that our character would be. But this person with the skeleton face, as she's going about and slicing and dicing and raising cities in my playthrough, like, to me, like, it's her group that's destroying people.
Yeah.
Like, do I want to side with her, who's just willing to see her very mortal demands realized, or would this archmage possibly be able to stop everything? And yeah, we're gonna Thanos snap some people, but like, there's a chance it could work. You know, that was the difference for me.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I kind of agreed with Luke's logic, which was like, it was just the person making the argument I couldn't really get behind, even though I was kind of like, I kind of agree with her more than the other person, but like, she's clearly evil. She's been evil from the beginning. I've seen her do terrible things. She works for the Steel Garrote. Like, screw her. I'm just going to make this decision just to mess with her, basically out of pettiness. That said, that was one of the few times the game had a glitch for me where after I did that quest, I couldn't see the next quest marker. I didn't know, had no idea where to go to continue the main campaign. So I had to reload to like 30 minutes before that made the decision. And I went and saw the other side just to see what it was like. And I felt like it was kind of just as bad. So I was like, oh, I'll just stick with my original decision. I don't feel like it was, you get, people hate you no matter what. So
Yeah.
I was just like, screw it.
Yeah. Mine's the same as kind of Luke's. It was like, well, I don't like Ludwin. I don't like Woedica. I already saw her destroy a town, so I was like, yeah, this is probably the worst choice. Because at the time, you don't know, like, you know, what the future, like, am I going to release Sapadal or whatever? So I was just like, I've already seen what this person can do, and I don't like them. Because the arguments, you could, like Travis said, the arguments, you could be like, yeah, Ludwin's better, but I just don't like her, right? And honestly, like, your job, you're there to stop the Dream Scourge. That was your whole purpose of being there in the first place. So in my mind, I'm like, I don't like this person. Plus, this is what I'm here to do. Like, it's going to stop the Dream Scourge here. So I'm going to, you know, what's the saying? I'm blanking on the saying.
Needs of the many
needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. You got to break some eggs to make some omelets, right? So it's just like, yeah, some people are going to die, but this is literally my whole goal on the Living Lands is to stop this thing from happening.
Was that your goal? So that's how he started off, but was that your mental goal as you played through the whole time?
It was mine. Yeah,
mine too.
Well, I mean, I knew it was the character's goal, so I'm like, okay, this is what I'm here to do. Plus, I didn't want to disappoint Yatsel. You know, like she.
Oh, dude. Oh my gosh, I can't stand her. It's so.
What, man. Like it's hard?
Do you? Yeah.
It is titties.
Every time. What, like it's hard?
Titties. What, like it's hard?
So.
Do we want to stick with endings here? Or do you want to go to party members?
I real quick, I want to get your guys' opinion on party members before we get into endings, because I personally went with Kai and Marius for a large portion of it until I got to Shatterscape, at which point I started to come across all of these purple rocks, and I was like, everything I throw at these purple rocks does nothing. So there's clearly a mechanic that I'm missing here that I don't understand. And I started to keep like a mental track of like, okay, where are all the purple rocks? So after a while, I finally went and met with Yatsli in town, and she's like, you know, you keep a girl waiting, kind of thing. And I was like, okay, well, let's go. Let's go deal with the Archmage. And that's when I realized that all of the purple rocks were all things that you could dispel. And I'm like, I knew it. I knew there was something that I had to do, and I hadn't come across it yet. So I went around the entire map and like undid all of the dispels and stuff like that. But the point that I'm getting to is I really felt hindered to playing with who I wanted to, because some companions have abilities, whether it's Kai's fire spell or Yatsli's dispel, that made me feel like I needed to have them all the time.
Yeah. There was like a gameplay need, not
Yeah.
a narrative need. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, unlike unless you're a mage like me, and I could use fire on the webs or the bramble, or I could use electricity on the things to start.
I didn't need the other two, which is why I had Yahtzee in my party the whole time.
That's
Mostly for mechanical, but also because I was a wizard and I had two wizards on my team. It was me and the two mages, and it was like pew pew pew.
For me, it was like it came down to I want Garrus in my party because he's the best companion, and he's Garrus from Mass Effect, and it was Yahtzee because I didn't have anything to dispel the illusion stuff, so I needed those two. If they did it like Dragon Age, Dreadwolf, where each character had that ability, but you were able to use each character's ability without them. With the I don't know if any of you guys play Dragon Age, but it has a similar thing where where each character has an ability to, like clear something away. So you brought who you wanted to be. If I had that here, it would be Kai and Giatta, because I feel like Giatta's abilities were more beneficial to me. The ability to heal you, the ability to put a shield around you, the ability to make your actions faster. And then combined with Kai, who I just like having around because I love Mass Effect, that would be my choices.
I kind of had the opposite logic where I was like, all right, I've already played Mass Effect, so I don't need Kai here. Done already.
I get that. But still, I mean,
it was great, and I liked having him in the beginning. But then as soon as I got Giatta, I was like, all right, well, I got to hedge my bets in case there's romance options here. Am I right, ladies? And I wanted to get Giatta there, and then when Yahtzee showed up, I was like, well, mechanically, it makes sense to have her here, and I'm tired of hearing Kai say the same phrase over and over again.
So you get to hear Yahtzee say the same phrase over and over again.
True, it is fair, but also she kind of made me laugh. I don't know. She's stupid.
Did you guys?
Her laugh was hilarious to me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Did you? I kept party members strictly for gameplay reasons. For combat-based reasons, except when I needed to go get them. What's that, bud?
Nothing.
I missed it. I clearly missed it, but I want to go back on here.
You were also trying to hedge your bets for romance options, weren't you? With Kai.
If it was Giatta, absolutely. And that's kind of what I wanted to mention was there were plenty of things throughout the game, and I know we'll touch on them in a few because I want to talk about the end game caves as well. But romancing was on the table at one point. Had to be. Some of these dialogue trees, the way they set you up, the way not just the innuendo from Yahtzee, but like you consistently are checking on Giatta, talking to her, and like you're talking about your friendship with Kai at various points, and it's like on the table at one point. It feels like romance was an option. And they pulled back for scale or otherwise.
They gave an interview a long time ago because I looked this up when I was writing the review, and they were like, "No, we're not doing it," And their answer was a little weird because it almost sounded like that's too hard. We're just not going to have it in the game. Like it kind of was a weird answer, but the other thing was like, "Oh, we just think that you can have different types of relationships, and we're going to focus on telling their personal stories rather than this distraction that inserts you into it." And they kind of gave an answer, but my wife read that
pre-pivot or not.
I actually was playing the game and having my wife read this to me because she immediately wanted to know, does this game have romance options? Because if it doesn't, I'm not going to play it. And I was just like, all right, well, look it up. And so she was reading it to me, but it was somebody who was high up there, and it was like, it was at least a year old, and they were like, no, we're just not doing it. It's not that type of game. But either way, you can't put a camp with a bunch of hot, sparkly characters that have clear flirtatious routes with, and
Very
not
much.
give me at least a faded black sex scene. What is this? This is table stakes, friends. Table stakes, I say.
What about the now I may have missed this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's weird that only 2 companions have companion quest and the other 2 don't. Like Kai has a companion quest that goes pretty much from
For Toma?
Yeah.
Emerald Stair to then Shatterscarp, where you do
Marius
the thing
does
with Tenga. Marius has the companion quest if you find the lost village in the 4th area, which deals his backstory. But
Giatta has her parents. Did you get
Yeah,
the?
but
I think
It's
the
not,
other
it's
two
not
were
a
just
companion quest
they were.
though.
I think what you're saying, Randall, makes sense to me. But my interpretation of that in the game was that they were just too integrated with like the main quests and the story, and so they kind of just were like,
so they did, like, you think they just didn't have enough time? Because that's what it almost
That's
felt
what
like
I
to
thought.
me, where it was
Maybe.
like, here's the first
Well-
two characters. Go ahead.
oh, you're right. It was just the first two. That's weird.
Yeah, to your point, I think like Giatta could have, if they had more time to develop that family story, because at the very end you're kind of like going through like each person's issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it got to Yahtzlee's and I was like, what the heck is Yahtzle's? Like the
They dump it on you at the very end.
Her dream.
apprenticeship
Yeah.
thing.
They set up her dream early on that
Yeah.
she's got that weird dream, and then you find out who she was in her past life, and it's kind of I was like, okay, considering that she entered at the very end of the game, I
Yeah.
think they did as good as they probably could have. But yeah, I agree that it felt really unbalanced. It really leaned Marius and Kai, didn't it?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
because Marius's companion quest is dark. It is like really dark
It sure
about
is.
what happened to him as a kid and everything, and then what you can do with the bad guy. And Kai's is throughout all the sections, and I think his is the
Yeah.
most fleshed out. Especially
They really
like-
want you to like Kai. They
yeah,
really job.
but then you get Giatta and Yatsel, and it's.
Well, I think
not-
Giatta's
thought it
was tragic also.
Well, no, but I mean, they
Giatta's
didn't-
could have been good. Yeah.
But it was like, okay, yeah, my parents are in the basement, and I was just thinking, like, there's going to be something about this later. And sure, you go through the visions in the garden, but it just felt like there's a missing connective piece or something where they could have expanded on that. I don't know if it was lack of time, but I just felt in a game with companions, you always expect the companions to have their own quest lines.
Yeah.
And it was just weird to me that only two did. I don't know.
It is weird.
Yeah, no, I agree. It felt like
the
there was
whole-
a lack of there.
The whole companion element felt weird to me of the game. Like I felt like it didn't really make it clear what they wanted to do with the companions. Like they were there, but they never contribute to conversations that impact the conversation. They always just say something to you and then the other person ignores it. They yell at you, but then don't really ever leave or have an opportunity to like, it kind of felt like they were in between whether or not they should put a bunch of time into the companions, which is unfortunate because I thought the writing was great and the voice acting was great and the companions were interesting. It just felt like they half baked the whole what they wanted the companion system to be.
It felt like to me it was an element. It was like a string that was not done being pulled, like a thread that was not done, because I got this nagging feeling as I played through. And mind you, I loved this game. Like I loved this game, 50 hours plus, and I enjoyed all but the first two. I think when I was just kind of
the intro is very bad. Yeah,
Yeah.
it really is. Yeah.
But I adored it. However, there was a moment. It's the quest where you go into, I think it's Ringen's realm, where like everything to find the Archmage. You go into like the ice area and the ice caves, and you see all those bodies frozen. It's a very dark, a very like very gothically dark, terrible, macabre, arabesque type display of bodies. You get this like Dante's Inferno vibe when you look at the scenery. And then when I looked at what happened to Marius's family, where they all die, like basically as cult leader kills them all. And then you look at some of the other things that happened to these characters. I mean, like Giatta's story is tragic. I felt like they pulled back on showing you how morbid it could be. It felt like these were all carryovers from the art pivot, because those are very dark, terrible things that I wondered if they were part of that. And like, I have no knowledge of it, but it felt like those things were really bad things and they pulled back almost.
Yeah, I'm not sure
No,
about
just
that.
me?
I've not really followed a lot of the development. I just wait for the game to be done and then review it. That's like
Gotcha.
my opinion, like my stance on it. So I have no idea what the development was like, but I will say there is a little bit of like cognitive dissonance in like the tone, especially the tone with your companions, and the fact that like Yahtzee is like doing crazy quips and being like, oh my god, I can't believe we're getting to meet this wizard, she's so cool, while like you're walking through just like a garden of decay and nihilism, and it's like, okay, chill lady, like I know you must be really used to that, but I don't know, man. I think the people of Eora are really desensitized to death.
It felt like it.
Yeah.
I mean, I Thanos asked half of them out of existence, and they were like, "Oh, that wasn't cool."
Well, I
And we
mean,
just
they
went
do
on.
kind of say like, oh, the living lands is this, you could die when you step foot out of the city. So I think people are kind of accustomed. It'd be like living in like the Wild Wild West and just being like, yeah, we have our place here, but if you go outside the city walls, Indian might get you, maybe some coyotes. Like death is like a natural thing or a thing that always happens. When I played through the game, because I had heard about the early development, I was playing through it and I'm like, I wonder how co-op would have worked in this game.
Oh,
Because
yeah,
I wonder how
that's
co-op
right.
would have worked in this game, considering how much dialogue and choice there are. I'm like, what would the second person be doing? Like, would you be taking turns choosing what, like how exactly would something like that work? Because this game was originally supposed to have co-op and stuff.
I think it probably would have worked the same way Baldur's Gate 3 does, or like a Divinity Original Sin. Those games have like choices and are co-op.
Yeah. But I think
that
you
is a
mentioned
hell of a pivot because it doesn't strike me as a game that could exist at all as a co-op game. But yeah,
you mentioned how the beginning of the game isn't, I don't know, like super interesting for lack of a better word. It's weird because I've listened to some reviews from buddies who are like, the first Dawn Shore, the first area you're in, is the best part of the game, and all the rest.
It absolutely is. I'm talking about
Agree.
before you get to Dawn Shore.
Okay, before you get to, so
Yeah,
you're talking about like the intro, like
that
island
intro.
Okay.
It has the problem that like all the Elder Scrolls games have, where you're like walking around in a sewer and you're learning tutorials, and you're just like, oh, get me the out of here.
See,
and like you have party members you know aren't going to stick with you. Like they're just like, all right, come on, these are not the main. These are not the A cast.
The fuzzy guy that you run into on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys see like what happened to him? Like, did you run into see his fate?
I saw him a few times throughout the story, but I don't really remember where he ended up.
Okay, so I don't know what you guys experienced, but when I went and I had the assassin sent to Lodwin, and she killed him. I found the little dude that I showed up on the beach with hanging from a noose in one of the trees on my way out of the zone.
Yeah, the assassins will kill him if you kill the assassins. I let the I forgave him and let them go, so he was still there alive for me.
Oh yeah, okay, so yeah, I did that too. So I didn't even know he could die.
Yeah.
So you killed the guy who shot you with the crossbow? Or
no, I had him turn himself in, and he was murdered for his crime. And the assassins, the rebels, hung the blue furry dude from a tree, like as I'm leaving the zone, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
Well, that's a pretty big change. That's kind of cool.
I didn't know that.
I was surprised. I was like, "Oh my god, that's like the one." I was like actually kind of attached.
No, because he shows up in the story other times if he doesn't die there.
Oh really?
He shows up in other zones and he talks to you.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah.
I let that assassin live, and I think what I said was like, hey, I don't want to see you around again. I understand your struggle. Like I kind of got his point. Like again, Jedi. I was like, I saw the rebellion in him, and I was like, go get him.
I even think letting them live. I believe
one of the
assassins helped me later on to do something.
He's above a certain age.
I think I ran into an assassin later on in the game that helped me do something, but I don't remember. But I wanted to, Travis, you said Dawn Shore was the best part of the game. It's funny because to me, I'm not going to say it was the worst, but that was when I wanted to delete the game. I was not jiving with the game for the first 5 hours.
I would say the first 2 hours were not doing it, and then like the 10 hours after that, I was like, hell yeah. It wasn't until I started repeating the cycle over and over again. Like when I got to the end of the second zone, I was like, okay, I think I've seen everything this game has to offer. I already know how it's gonna end. I've already met all the companions. Like I'm just sort of like,
for me, my favorite sections were the Emerald Stair and Shatterscarp. I love both of those. I sort of felt that the game had one, like when I got to the fourth area and started doing stuff there, that's when I started to feel there's one more hub than there should be, Like that's
not counting the garden.
Not counting the garden. Like that's like I love the combat and the exploration so much in this game that like I was so looking forward to getting on every night to just explore the world. Like I left the main quest for the very last thing to do, and I was just getting on and just exploring the map and doing all this stuff. And I really loved Emerald Stair and Shatterscarp, and I did not care for the stuff in Dawnshore. Maybe because at that point in time, I just was like, I don't know if I want to play this game, honestly.
I think that's what it was. 'Cause the best part of a Dawnshore was that if you just wandered, they gave you something to discover, whether you were climbing up on top of a house, around a waterfall, around a bend. That to me felt like the most handcrafted of the areas.
Yeah, it did to me.
Yeah. The number of people who drowned was staggering throughout the game, though. I would push back and say there's probably more people that drowned in rivers that I looted than bears that I killed.
For some reason, when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, there were a lot of people drowning. And then I realized that was in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. I play too many video games. There's a lot of drowning in that game as well. No, yeah, I tend to agree with that. I'm a sucker for big city, and they already said off the gate, hey, this is the biggest city in the lands, which was like a wink to me as the player of like, hey, don't get your hopes up. Like this is as complicated as it's gonna get. And I'm a sucker for a big city, even though I have problems with the city they presented with like NPCs not moving around or doing anything, that sort of stuff. But it did feel to me like there was the most to do. And then when you went around the city, I felt like I was never really going very far without running out of stuff to kill and quests to do. Whereas some of the other ones, like the Emerald Stair, I feel like I walked through so much of that and found nothing. I was just like walking through it like, man, this is like just a flat piece of land with like.
See, this is
farms.
where we differ, because I don't like big cities in games.
Interesting.
I don't know.
Who hurt you? Like, tell me what.
I don't know. I just.
What did you think of Cyberpunk?
No. I mean, like which games?
Well, I mean,
because you clearly must have had some bad experience with the game where you're bored by the city aspect. So what? Like, do you like Cyrodiil in Oblivion?
See, I'd rather just be exploring the wilderness in Oblivion. I don't really like being in the towns in those games.
Are you an outdoorsman in real life?
No, definitely not. I mean,
I'm wondering
Logan,
if there's
you
a part
mentioned
of you that's in tune with nature. You know?
Well, it's weird because I love Grand Theft Auto, I love Cyberpunk, and a lot of those are like based in big cities. But I feel like the big cities and those urban things are different than medieval towns in like Skyrim.
You don't like fantasy cities specifically.
Yeah, I think it's that. I don't know. I would like I said, I didn't like Dawnshore. I didn't like being in Paradis.
Paradis nuts.
I don't know. Maybe some of it has to do with like the world isn't really lived in. It's just I don't know. I just had so much more fun exploring. Like, oh, what's over here? Oh, it's a spider cave with all these spiders. And it's like, oh, there's a ruined thing here, and there's a totem you can find. And I just enjoyed that aspect where like Paradis and stuff is just like, oh, I've seen all these cities and all these other games. It's no different than anything else. I don't know. It's weird that like you liked it a lot and then I didn't like it at all, and we have differing opinions about like what parts of the games I enjoyed, because I really enjoyed Emerald Stair and Shatterscarp. I just like the look of the Shatterscarp level and the things that you could find there. I don't know. It's just weird.
I maybe like Emerald Stair from like an arc point the best. I thought that was like, because killing the rebels that you never really see or letting them go is like whatever. It's like, okay, they were in the sewer. It's like one decision. But like Emerald Stair, I felt like saving the city was pretty huge, and there was such weird stuff going on with the magic there, and I like that part. I just felt like the map itself didn't give me a ton to engage with. You had to go pretty far before you found stuff to do when you're roaming around. And then also the city was like 4 feet long. It was like,
it wasn't a very big city.
Yeah, it's more like a fort, really.
I was let down by Gawain's Tusks, like the fourth area, but I really did enjoy Dawnshore because I felt like always something to discover. Emerald Stair had a beautiful just aesthetic, right? Like especially when it went to nighttime, I really enjoyed like the visuals as it went to nighttime. I thought Shatterscarp was really cool because they had like these, it almost looked like giant fingers of like coral into the sand. But Gawain Tusk, I think I was unenthralled by the state of the story, I guess, at that point. I wanted to be at the garden, but that's a PNR. Like you could not go past that point of no return. And so I was like, I'll wait. And so I spent so much time. Plus I enjoyed the combat so much that I liked finding these bad guys, and I'd already cleaned out all these other areas. for better or worse, they don't respond or respawn rather.
Yes. So do we like that or not like that?
Here's the thing. If you would have asked me, Travis, do you think it would be good if you were in an open world RPG and enemies didn't respawn? I'd be like, yeah, enemies respawning annoy me all the time. But now having seen it executed, I'm like, I don't know. I feel like maybe I was wrong and that the game designers actually knew what they were talking about, because it is startling.
Tell them
when
about the
the
clip in
world
your
is-
review.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys watched my video review, but there's a clip where I walk for 12 minutes and I don't encounter a single living thing. I walk across the entire map of Emerald Stair. And this was me going back to it because I was trying to complete a side quest, and I walked through it. And I looked down at my footage. I just happened to be recording, and I was like, I don't think I saw anything. So I just clicked save and I put that in, and we sped it up. And like, yeah, I get what they're doing because it's really not that type of RPG. They're kind of like pushing you along. But the problem with that is that it starts to feel like you've overstayed your welcome. Like, did you guys ever feel like you were like, they were basically telling you like, get out of here, guys. Like, this is done. Like, there's clearly nothing left for you. Because that's kind of what I felt. And even if I wanted to stay in an area, I felt like I was not welcome.
I did not feel that way, but I knew I was playing a video game because I'd go back and everything was cleared. So it did not bother me. Like, and that was what I noticed about your review, to loop back. The stuff that you cited as being like detriments, I respected every single one of those points, but I was far less bothered by them than you were.
That's fine. Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's all degrees, right? It's how much you care about that stuff versus not. But yeah, because like enemy variety, like somebody pointed that out to me and was like, I didn't care about the enemy variety at all. And I'm like, that's fair enough. But every time I saw a bear, I was like, these guys, I'm so sick of fighting bears in this game. That's just,
can I get a wolf?
Like, so okay, I'm as I was going through your review and I'd had some time to think about this. I think if Avowed hadn't been so good at exploration and designing like secrets and little hints and things everywhere, I probably would want to have something more to do, because I really did love the combat. I ended the game nailing it right before the final fight at level 30. Nice. Doing as much as at like the final fight right before the end, I got right to level 30.
Damn, I hit 29 and I was just like, I don't know what I'm missing.
Well, they power level you in that last bit.
Yeah, they
really do. Yeah. I got 2 levels just off of that last like stretch there. But the thing that I wanted to do when I was done with an area, that it was just go around and explore and try and find all the little secrets and all the little things that I could loot, because it was all going to be fodder for upgrading my gear, which I fully kitted out my entire loadout by the time I was done. And that was my goal. So having to go through and deal with enemies would have been fine for me if they had respawned, but I feel like that would have slowed my gameplay down even more. And the thing that I was hoping to do was just find the weird stuff that I hadn't found already. And if they'd respawned mobs, I probably would have just moved on and been like, it's not worth the time to have to try and go and kill all these things again just to try and check this one section here.
I'll offer a different perspective. I actually liked the fact that they didn't respond, because it felt like you were accomplishing something. It felt like that's one of the things I don't like about respawning enemies, because it feels like the work I've done. And I had this particular problem with Indiana Jones, where I went through camps and I would like stealthily take everybody out, and then I would have to come back to that camp for like a side quest, and all the enemies are back. So I felt like what I just did was a waste of time trying to, take all these enemies out. So like you get a game like Avowed and suddenly you're exploring everywhere and killing all these enemies. Like, this is the fruit of your labor. There's no enemies left. I felt like, all right, I've actually accomplished something. Like, like I did it.
I think I'm more on your end of that argument, Rand, because I very much felt the same. But I think that's kind of what I was saying. It's like, it felt like I was playing a video game. Like I liked that part because I'd done this, I'd accomplished it. Going back to explore to find uniques, which the unique weapons, some of them are really cool, and I really liked them.
Like everybody ended up with the same pistol and the same flamey sword, except for maybe Travis.
Yeah, I had a unique wand that did electricity on every attack.
I had a unique one that did frost, but
I did frost.
But even when I would, so I like that because like I'm going back and I want to like uncover the treasure maps and the totem thing. It was great not having enemies because I could just run around at my leisure and not have to worry about getting into fights. And so when the enemies in Shatterscarp and the 4th area started to respawn because the Dreamthaws started respawning, I was just like, I don't like this. I don't know if you guys ran into the respawning Dreamthaws, but like
I did not, but I found that if I
Are you sure
discovered,
there's respawning dream?
oh yeah,
Yeah, I
100%, 100% respawning
Huh.
enemies.
I
In the
ran
3rd and
into a
4th area.
couple like myself after going
But
back.
the only
It
ones that
was-
respawn are the Dreamthaws.
Yeah.
huh? Well, what I did notice again, because I went back to get achievements and just kind of see some of the differences in the ending. So, like, I found an old save prior to the garden, and went back and went through the garden levels, having discovered some new uniques. The first time I played through, I did not train with any of the companions to give you some attribute bonuses, and then the second time I did. One of the things I thought was cool, and I would recommend people do if you don't want to replay the whole game, reload an old save after you found some new uniques, because like I ended the game more enjoyably with like one of my shields had like when I hit people, it caused a web effect on them, which is like frost, but it's not. And so I felt like I could do different kind of attribute damages and bonuses with some of these new uniques that I'd gone back to discover. So that was the draw of, if there's no respawning enemies, why go get new weapons? Because you could take them into the garden and really put them on display, because that garden is a healthy uptick of enemy intensity, right? Like they really densely pack that thing with combat, and they power level you pretty fiercely towards the end, to the point where I wondered if it was rushed. I just didn't care. But you do fight the magfolk like in there, and that was a different enemy set, as it were.
Yeah.
I
was cool. They had the occasional surprise. I just felt like they were a little too few and far between. And I played the game on the hardest difficulty, and that I feel like the leveling, because I went back and I made a second character and played it on normal, and it is such a different experience, because my experience was everything always had like 2 skulls next to it. Like even when I got to the end of the game and I had a legendary unique that was fully upgraded the most it possibly could be, like all my armor, all my equipment, the final fight, like everything had 3 skulls on it. Like it was just, I was doing no damage to them and they were doing like a ton of damage to me. So I was like dodging for like 40 minutes in that final fight. Like it was just so long.
Yeah, that was super easy for me. I had 2 pistols for one loadout, and then
what difficulty were you on?
I was on normal.
Okay,
and it was like it was a joke. It was just super quick. Everything was stunned, and I had to dodge once in a while.
I do not recommend playing this game on the hard difficulty then, because that sounds way more enjoyable.
Yeah, it was nice to kind of like get that little like, oh, this is just kind of like we're just having some fun now. Now it's just blowing things up, having that power fantasy.
I think the gear upgrade system works better on normal, because like you'll see the enemies. You have like a fine wand, so you have blue, and then like, oh, you see the purple enemies, so they do a little bit more damage to you, so you got to be more careful, and you're not doing a lot of damage to them. And then you slowly start upgrading your weapon, and since enemies don't scale, you'll reach that point where you're beyond them, and then it's like, oh, I feel real powerful now, because now my stuff is destroying them. So I feel like that the whole gear thing works better on like normal or hard, because you eventually do level past the enemies, and it does feel like you are becoming super powerful. Versus I did try a little bit of I tried cheesing. I had to save literally at the end of the game right in front of Ludwin, and I pressed start, and I'm like, change it to Path of the Damned. I'm like, let's see if I could change this to fight the final boss on the hardest difficulty, to give me that hardest difficulty achievement. So I beat her on the hardest difficulty, and it didn't give it to me. And I was like, well, I'm not replaying the whole game on the hardest difficulty, but
nice.
I
had that achievement then. That's cool.
You would if you you'd have to beat her again, because it doesn't
beat her again.
Oh, you have to beat the game. God,
it was strange. That was one aspect. Is I was like, I have to beat it again.
I didn't fight her at the end. I just talked to her.
I guess you could do that. I guess you could.
Yeah, I just told her. I just told her to kill herself, and she was like, "All right."
Oh, you had enough attribute points to tell her to do that.
Yeah, I was just like, kill yourself, and she was like, all right, fine.
Well, one of my buddies said he surrendered to her, and she killed him, and the game ended.
Rand!
That's hella funny.
When I went back to redo it to see if like I could become a member of the Steel Garrote or whatnot, I surrendered to her, and she just goes whack and just took my head off. I literally jumped. I was like,
that's awesome.
Had no idea.
I had no idea. That's cool.
I might have been the most naive ever, but she just whacks off my head, and I was like, wait, what? Like,
of course she did. She's
Of
got a
course-
skeleton for a head.
That's why I didn't side with. That's why I Thanos snapped some people. But like, I was just so oblivious to that being a possibility.
was
I was
funny.
like, "What is?"
I will
this?
say this: they at least respect your decisions at the very end when they don't have to build game around it, which like is kind of the go-to move in RPGs. But like the very end, they do swing for the fences in terms of like, all right, your decisions really do have consequences. Like you could bring a god, like it sounded like two of you guys didn't know about this part of the game, but like you can get Sapadal a body, and then when you free her, she goes in it and starts walking around as like a big old tree robot.
The floating down the river and
The floating down the river as a robot was crazy. That was a crazy sequence.
that was hilarious. So you guys know the fight where you have, or not the fight, but the interaction that you have with the dude who's like all gold.
All gold.
Yeah.
Little yeah. If you so I screwed around a little too much and he got pissed off, so I had to kill him. You know, these things happen.
Yeah.
But when I talked to the Adrastone and I was talking to Sapadal or Sappy, that was when I was like, okay, yeah, if you want to use this body, go for it. I don't care. And then at the very end, Sapadal's like, I poured piece of me into the statue, and it was, I felled some trees when I first tried to walk, and then I quickly regained my or understood how to walk, and then I was bounding throughout things and stuff, and it's all in third person. But there's the artwork that they had for that had the statue just like arms behind the head next to a couple ships like down the river, just kind of like floating down the river. And it's like, at first I would come to you to get fixed if I broke, and then I learned how to fix myself. And you just kind of see them going off and like becoming like their own little adolescent during summertime. It was great.
That quest, I didn't understand the gravity. When you're talking to the gold like priest, I didn't get the gravity of what it could be. And when I looked at it, I was like, this thing couldn't handle a god. This is all made of wood. What is this? Stupid?
As soon as I walked in that room, I was like, I have no idea how this quest is going to end, but I'm going to kill this guy.
Yes.
There's a funny thing with that, because you could be like, he'd be like, oh, do you have the relic? And you're like, yeah. So you put it into the statue, and then it doesn't work because he's like, pull the lever, doesn't work. And he's like, well, could you put your soul into the thing? And there's like options, and it's like, and I said, sure, why not? And then Kai's like, what are you doing? He's like, you will die. Your mortal coil. And I was just like, oh yeah, no problem. So then you go stand under this thing while he pulls the lever, and this like purple light hits you, and you die. And then it's achievement unlocked, death contemplated. It literally, like, you die right there. It's like,
oh my god.
It's funny.
Did the credits roll and you have to start back?
No, the credits didn't roll. It's just
try again.
It's just like, whatever.
That's too bad. They chickened out. They should have done like Outer Worlds where you can just hyper jump into the sun.
I love that about Outer Worlds. You know what other game does that I actually really loved was Far Cry 6. Far Cry 6 had a mission where you could take a
That's
boat.
right. You could just sit at the table.
Yep.
Yeah,
all the Far Cry games have that.
There was
that's right. They all have an ending
4
like
did that.
Yeah, there was.
Arkham City had an option
you
to
could
do
take
that.
the boat and you could go across the mainland. And they're like, "Hey, you won the game."
Wait, what's the Arkham City ending?
If you're during a Catwoman mission, you can, instead of going to save Batman, you can just take the loot and leave, and you'll get credits. And then like it brings you back after the credits, and you're like, "Don't do that."
Yeah.
But like
That's
you can just
amazing.
Prey does that
I
as
love
well.
Secret endings, dude. I'm a sucker for
Which
secret
one?
endings.
Prey. 2017's Prey does that. If you find the escape thing first, you can leave, and it gives you all the garbled stuff that sort of a little sneak peek at the actual ending. So like if you actually do that quest, you start to think like, oh, there's something weird going on with this game. So, but yeah.
Well, I want to go back to this body thing for Sapadal. Like in the end game, like MCU storm and like everything's happening around you. Do you see the body fighting like magfolk or anything?
It's all just paintings.
It's all the slideshow at the end.
Okay, because there is a point like when you're going through, it's post garden. It's when you're portaled back to the city. It's 2 weeks later. I looked up during one of the battles because I played through, I think that end fight. I think I've done it 3 times now, just trying choices that I not save scummed, but like gone back and gone through the garden sequence and stuff. And when I looked up at one point, I saw a giant magfolk
Yep.
hitting something or fighting.
Yeah.
And so I wondered if Sapadal was engaging with that because that's Woedica's thing.
No, they did that because I think it was in the art from when she was telling you about what happened the first time. So they put it there, and I was like, at the end, it's like, oh well, you defeated Woedica. There's nothing. You saved the city, and I was like, I don't think I dealt with those giant robots, did I? Like, how are we gonna do? That seems pretty bad. Like, they're just not gonna make me confront that at all in any way.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We don't get the budget for that. Sorry. Next game,
Yeah,
maybe.
I don't
Oh,
think so.
Avowed 2, The Return of
I hope
Woedica.
Outer Worlds 2. I don't know how you guys feel, but like this feels like to me like on par with Outer Worlds 1, which I loved Outer Worlds, but like, you know, it was very clearly like the 1.0 of what I know Obsidian is capable of. I'm really hoping Outer Worlds 2 will be not at the same levels of Avowed, but like a step up. I want it to be like their New Vegas.
I hope so. I don't know if they've had enough time to make that game be in that state.
They've been busy. You think Grounded, Outer Worlds,
Yeah.
Obsidian. I'm
All
sorry, not
different
Obsidian,
teams. Well, I mean, they've had
Avowed.
the 4 teams. So like Pentiment and Grounded were 2 small teams. Avowed's B team A team, and Outer Worlds is B team. But when we first got like that trailer, that was like the announcement trailer for Outer Worlds 2. There was nothing. Like,
But that was
they didn't-
years ago, man. That was so long.
Yeah, that was
ago.
2021, I want to say.
And they already have a lot of the assets for that world, and they already have the engine. And I'm kind of like, maybe I don't know.
I mean, if they Majora's Mask it, I'm totally fine with that. I can't wait to get back into that world. I thought the DLCs were great, but yeah, I'm worried that it'll be more of the same with
probably right.
quality improvements.
So what about the actual ending? Right? Because there's like the ending cutscene, which I thought was like thoroughly underwhelming in every sense of the word. Right?
Oh, you didn't like that? Where they went through everything? You didn't like that?
No. So there's the cutscene that happens after you beat her, right? Which is like what, 10 seconds long? Because like, there's hardly any cutscenes in this game.
Remind me what the cutscene is.
I think it's just like they all 4 of them kind of stand around each other, like, "Hey, we did it!" And then it pans up in the sky. I don't remember, but I know there's a small cutscene. But like, hey, we just beat Ludwin, and it sort of just ends, and then it's the paintings with all the things that you've done throughout the game and all the sort of stuff. How did we feel about that?
I liked that it wrapped up all the points that we had gotten to. I liked that it addressed, like, I felt like there was where you saw the storyboard of where each one of your choices played out. It reminded me of choices that I didn't make or that I didn't remember I made. It's kind of like when you talk to Sapadal and she's like, "Remember what you said about the bear? Remember what you said about this?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah."
You didn't remember that?
Okay. Well, like some of them I did, some of them I didn't, you know.
Oh, I remembered them. I was like making decisions because I knew exactly what again, like we knew what the ending was going to be. So I was like, I'm making this decision because I'm having faith that it's going to come up at the end.
I didn't know she was a baby. Like, I didn't get that.
I get that she had a baby brain just based on context. If she was like so confused, I was like, all right, she clearly has like amnesia or something.
You know, I did look up some lore about pillars before I played. Apparently, the gods like Woedica and Ethos and all those, they aren't natural gods. They were forged by a previous race that made them. So there's a part of me that thought Woedica was jealous that there's an actual living god that wasn't necessarily forged. That like part of her was like jealous of this actual Sapadal being like something that was truly just born rather than like how these other gods were artificially made, which I think is fascinating about gods being artificially made. Some of that lore is pretty cool. But
Pillars is super cool lore, and I think they did make good use of it while also having to kind of reject some of the lore from the previous game where you make pretty big changes to like how the afterlife works.
So
which they kind of just ignored, which is weird.
I heard that they ignored it, which I didn't like.
They kind of have to, right? It's one of those things where like they changed the entire world, and so it's like what I imagine Mass Effect 4 is going to be like, right? Like you kind of, how do you address what you did?
I mean, Mass Effect 5.
Yeah, God. I mean,
we don't talk about Andromeda.
Are they calling it 4? Aren't they calling it Mass Effect 4?
Is it actually ever going to actually come out?
Yeah,
I think internally they're calling it 4.
Not if
But
EA
anyway.
has anything to say for that.
But
Yeah, but I kind of felt like they kind of had to ignore that part of it in order for the story to make sense. It would have been interesting if maybe they went a different direction and said, okay, well, these are now the new rules of how divinity and the afterlife work, and you're just going to have to like accept that if you didn't play the second one. Because if you're a player who doesn't know anything, you can accept whatever they tell you because it's all new to you, right? But because you make decisions, then they have to choose a canon, and that becomes really hard. So I get why they did it, but as somebody who played both of the Pillars games and really likes the Pillar series, I was like, all right, I guess we're just not talking about that. But I accepted it in like 5 hours in. I was like, whatever, it's not a big deal.
So I'm kind of curious, like for your main playthrough, like what would or whatever you consider like your canon playthrough for this, where did you guys end up with your main decision on what to do with Sappy?
I'll start. I freed Sapadal because creatures that are I didn't, because my whole premise was like being good, and so something in captivity doesn't get a chance to right wrongs and grow. And I think if you're holding something captive, like you are wrong, I guess, in the sense of and seeing who was holding them together. So I chose to free her. I had all 4 companions with me trying to stop the Steel Garrote, stop Ludwin. That was my goal, was to let Sapadal grow and be a good god. That was my whole purpose in the game. So that was my canon playthrough. And desperate, but I do want to briefly, before we close out today, I do want to talk about like possibilities for DLC or New Game Plus and stuff too. Rand, what did you do?
Oh, I freed her. I tried teaching her that, like, you know, you got to like kind of control your power, giving her a second chance, and like you, I had the companions, and we beat Ludwin. But that's what I sort of felt like all the dream sequences when you would set up a party camp, and then all of a sudden you're on the Adra, and you had those, you know, like conversations with her. That's what it was leading to. Like that, I thought, like, oh, is this going to be like I'm going to teach her to be a good god or a bad god? So like I wanted to do that as my canon thing. Like I'm gonna release her and I'm gonna teach her to be, hey, you gotta know that you're pretty powerful, and we can't do that anymore. We can't have a temper tantrum, you know. So that's kind of the way I played that.
Travis?
Yeah, I did the same thing, and I actually think the game kind of makes the decision for you, because by default, the god's tendency is to be vengeful and mean. And so when you teach her bad stuff, you're kind of just leaning into it, because she suggests the prompts to you from the frame of like, why wouldn't you just do this super messed up thing? And then you have to stop her from thinking that way. And so I think it kind of leans on the player to do that. And in order to be mean, you have to like kind of agree with her initial like concepts of things and also be mean to her. So it like you kind of really have to go out of your way, from my perspective, to actually like get her to be an evil god, because she already is kind of leaning that way, and then you just have to like treat her very strangely. Is the way I interpreted it.
Did you guys get like chastising her was odd for me, because I did chastise her at times, but on the one
sometimes
hand,
you have to, like, there's 3 options and they're all be mean to her in some way.
It's so strange, because like you have to chastise this god who is your patron god. You know, you exist for them. But also it's a god, and you're like, hey, don't do that, and because it's a child. But I didn't like, again, Vixelis in chat saying didn't pick up on it, nor did I. Like, again, that was a later in the game thing where I figured it out, where I understood that, oh, what we have is an emotional reaction when you don't understand the gravity of your power. Like that, it took time for me to get that, because I was genuinely flabbergasted at some of the larger things in play. Because after the city was raised, I questioned everything. Is this voice that's imprisoned actually a bad thing? I didn't know who Woedica was. However, like as you go through, like like you pick up on that stuff.
Well, because they try, like, I don't want to say it's a red herring, but they tried very, very hard to make you think that the voice is bad.
Yeah.
Because you find the ancient memories, and it's all about a civilization that was destroyed by her, right? You talk to the You talk to the Woedica, and it's all the bad things she did. Like, the game is trying to push you down this route of, are you sure you really want to like free this person? Because everything we've shown you about her is pretty awful, right?
Yeah.
So the game, I think, is funneling you down this thing where you're trying to second guess yourself about initially like, oh, well, the voice in my head's right, but then you start learning more and more about her, and you become horrified, being like, that you love these people, but you killed them all. And then, like, her response is, you know, some sort of, we twine, we grow, you know, like the metaphors about, you know, like gardening and stuff. And so I don't know. Like, I sort of feel like maybe they wanted you to kill her. I don't know if the game is really pushing you towards that, but they definitely set it up so you think that is the right thing to do. Like, we can't do this because look what's done in the past. Woedica sort of makes sense from what she's talking about, and then even the previous guy that you meet, like, who's in the crystals, like, you need to kill her, right? So, like, all the actions of the game is telling you this person's bad, and so...
I think they do that because by default the player is, you know, humans have empathy, most of us, and probably by default you're going to be like, yeah, why would I murder like a seemingly, you know, nice god? And so they have to kind of put stuff in front of you that's like, maybe releasing her would be bad. Let's tell you how she destroyed all these people. Let's tell you how her old patron thought she was bad. Let's show one thing I thought they could have leaned on way more was showing Lodwyn and how she had felt like she was being taken advantage of by her god. And they could have used using another god who's been kind of manipulated and turned into a monster by their patron deity as a way to make you reflect on maybe you as a bad person. And I felt like they got to the edge, but then never really, communicated that. I felt like they could have done it earlier in the game, and made it more clear, that kind of connection. But yeah, I get why they have to try to convince the player that like killing the god is not necessarily off the table, because I feel like most people would not even consider it.
Yeah, but they beat you over the head with it, though.
They really do.
But there wasn't even a counter at one point where you discovered like she did something good. It was always bad, right? There wasn't like a counter example of something like that she did that was really great. It was just, oh my gosh, she's so awful.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just felt like releasing her is the right thing to do. And it really did seem like at the end when it was going through all that stuff that it was the right choice. Because Sapadal didn't destroy everything. She actually learned and grew.
They continue to make you think that maybe things aren't going to go good for you right up until you get to the slideshow at the end. And then it's like, okay, yeah, I clearly made the right decision. Like, no question. But yeah, right up until the end, they're like, I don't know. Maybe she'll be evil. Who knows? Which is very funny.
Were you guys confused? And Logan, start off on this one, if you will. The ancient memories. Maybe I'm dumb, guys, but like I didn't get it. Like, whose story was that? How did that play in?
That was your story. Your previous story.
Yeah. It was
you're reincarnated. You were all those people.
Yeah. Yep. So you're telling your story.
You were educating Sappy on what the choices of life should be based on all of your reincarnations that you're going through with all the ancient memories.
Oh, okay. That I guess makes sense in hindsight, but in the process, I feel like I must have missed something somewhere.
It's basically just that you're a new player who doesn't know Pillar's lore. Because Pillar's lore, like the whole idea of reincarnation is like a huge part of every single Pillars game. And so like anybody who's played Pillars, as soon as you saw the first slide, you're like, oh, cool, I'm seeing one of my past lives. Sick. You know?
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
That
I did
the
not.
game down for me so much, though.
Really, I really like those ancient memories.
The ancient memories.
I thought they were really cool.
The knocks at the window at 11 p.m. at night in my bedroom, like
they do it a lot. They did it a lot. A lot of those felt like they weren't useful conversations. I was like, did they need to do another one of these? But
yeah. Every single time I was just like, please just let me get through the night without being woken up by the voice. That's all I ask. I just want to get back to shooting and killing stuff.
I'm less harsh on it than you. I really liked the past life stuff. I thought those were such cool sequences. And then most of the conversations I had with Sapadal, I was like, okay, I'm making progress. But sometimes they would just be like, hey, she's waking you up to ask you a random question. You have 3 options of yelling at her in different ways. And I was like, why did they do this? Like they really
Yeah.
put this beat in here.
I have kids for a reason. I like my sleep. So I went with what you guys did, but for a long time during the middle of the game, I was like, the best way to stop the Dream Scourge is going to be to kill this god. Like, they can't control themselves. Woedica locked them up for reasons. And to be perfectly honest, if my goal here is to stop people from being corrupted, the easiest way to do that is to remove the source. You know, you cut out the rot from the rest of the limb, and the rot is coming from Sapadal. And that was something that I picked up on pretty early on. So all the way up until the very point where I was having that like one-on-one, like, all right, I'm gonna let you free, but if you do one thing wrong, you're grounded for the entire summer kind of situation.
Yeah.
And that was the qualifier at the very end there. It's like 2 a.m. and I'm sitting here trying to finish this game. And I'm like sitting here finally talking to Sapadal, and I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to, I was going to kill you, but you're making promises, and I'm going to take you at your word because you brought me back from the dead to do this. So I'll let you be free. And that was the reason. That was the very end there, because all the way up until that point, I was sitting there. I'm like, I'm gonna kill this god. I swear, I'm gonna kill this god. But
wow, that's funny. Yeah, we all had different experiences, which is cool.
Yeah. I said in my review, and again, I want to point everybody that is catching this, whether you're watching it live now or if you're watching this on VOD later, like each of our videos are in the description. Please go watch them, because it's interesting to hear our takes, especially after this discussion. But for me, the driving force of this entire game was combat and traversal. I loved exploring. I loved climbing over ledges, discovering loot. I loved going in and fighting these enemies. And then the story slowed down what I was enjoying. So every one of those knocks on the door, knocks on the window at night.
You didn't like the story at all, huh?
It's not that I didn't like it. I didn't dislike it, but there were times where I'm like, click, 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 let's go. Like
oh damn.
And like
skipping the dialogue in an Obsidian game, you absolute monster.
That's kind of the part that I wanted to kind of get at. This is my first Obsidian game. I loved it. I love this world. I really do love the characters. Giatta was my favorite. I really liked Kai. I honestly, Marius, I saw myself in Marius at times. The only one
it was
I
the
didn't
beard,
like was,
right? It was the beard.
Yeah.
Also, it might have been also when I watched your video.
It was also very short.
Fallout New Vegas?
I've never played any of the Obsidian games ever.
I want him to go do Outer Worlds, because the comedy in Outer Worlds is so worth it.
So good. It's such a good. Yeah, I mean, I'm so excited for 2. You didn't play Grounded?
Not much. I think I played it when it was it beta early access.
Grounded has one of my favorite jokes in any video game, and it doesn't happen until 90% through the game, and you have to play like 100 hours to get there. And so no one I know has gotten to that joke.
Really?
And I have no one to share it with.
I
It's
mean,
very upsetting.
Is it with
I played
Burgle?
it. I beat it. What's
beat
the
it?
joke? Yeah.
I'm not gonna say it here. I don't want to
No,
spoil it.
well, it's not like Luke. It's not like Luke or Logan are gonna do it. What's the joke?
Well,
I want to know.
Well, no,
Okay.
I'm okay with it, because I love Grounded. I've spent a lot of time in Grounded, but I've never like made it all the way through the story, like to see what happens at the very end.
Well, I will allude to it, because I don't know if this isn't a Grounded spoiler cast, and I want people to play that game.
Fair enough.
But
Fair
it was the nature
already-
of raw science. The moment where you find out what the deal with raw science is.
Oh, really?
Okay,
Do
I
you
know what you're
remember
talking
that,
about.
Randall?
But I know
You
what you're
get that
talking about.
point in the lab?
It's been a couple. It's been.
I was howling.
Yeah, I know what you're talking
That
about.
part,
It's been a while since I played it, so I have a vague recollection of
Such
it.
a
But
good game.
I do know what you're referring to. Yeah, that was a really good game. I don't like
So
Grounded.
good.
I played
9
it
out
in
of
co-op
10.
with my buddy,
I
and
did.
we just had a blast playing that thing. It was great.
I will
Of course,
say
I turned
after-
off all the survival elements. I'm like, I don't want to eat. I don't want to have to sleep. I don't want to have to drink.
Oh no, I love that.
I
stuff.
hate survival elements in games.
After this though, I want to play Obsidian games. Like, I kid you not. Like, I'm like, oh, I want more. But the only
Pillars
thing
is a little old, but honestly, it's so worth it. The
Alpha
Pillars games are so
Protocol,
good.
South Park, Stick of Truth.
Alpha Protocol,
Come on.
underrated,
Like,
honestly.
Truth is amazing.
Yeah.
So I loved the combat. That's what kept me coming back, and like that's what makes me want New Game Plus. That's what makes me want DLC.
But don't play
because
Pillars,
I just
actually.
really
He does like Diablo 4 if he doesn't have to think too much about it. No offense, Luke,
True.
but you like to go
No,
smash.
games for me are a turn your brain off because my brain is on all day at work.
Yeah, Pillars is like Diablo, but turn your brain on even more.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Mm.
No, I had to learn Diablo. Like I was watching Lohr, but also like
You don't just hire somebody to play it for you?
Honestly, that was kind of the solution that I came across. But then I was going to tell everybody that it was me.
Okay, cool.
Despite
Yeah,
being in two
that's
places.
that's what we all do, right? That's
So
how you know
you
you're
want
a real
New Game
gamer.
Plus. You want New Game Plus so you can take all the stuff that all your skill points and everything to take. Because I did find it was like I beat the game and I'm like, oh, so now they're letting you back into the world. I was like, interesting. Okay.
It couldn't.
Yeah.
The world would be too different. Although
Yeah,
I guess
it
they
would
could
be
drop
empty.
you just before, but then you're basically playing a different character because that was like what 5 hours ago that you started the final run.
I want to take my character that I've got all these points with, and I want to keep getting points, and I want to see what I can do with the skill tree even more pressed. Just cause
you numbers go higher, weirdo. You absolute weirdo.
But I also
love it,
want
though.
like DLC to explore more. Like, give me another area, or
I think they'll do that.
even better. I think they will too. But I really want like, if you enemy variety is a fair complaint. It'd be really cool to introduce a new enemy type just to add to the mod. Like if you can get a wolf in there, I don't know, something.
I didn't find the enemy critique something that resonated with me, because as I was looking through like the I can't remember what they were called, the lizard
or whatever, bestiary.
the Zarups. I felt so much variety, like going into the Zarup camps and stuff. I was impressed with like the fact that they had mages, they had priests, they had like commanders and stuff. I think the bear argument is valid, but with most of the other ones, like I found there was enough tweak with them that it still kind of scratched that. Okay, this is a livable world with them having like different people to kind of like, they had skeleton archers and skeleton mages and skeleton priests, so they had
they just have it for every like Dream Scourge. It's like, oh, there's a Dream Scourge priest and a Dream Scourge mage and a Dream Scourge archer, and then they did the same for the Zarups and the same for the skeletons, and then you fight spiders every 2 minutes, and then you get attacked by a beetle, and it's like, man, I'm just seeing these guys a whole lot. So I don't know. This is something that bothers me in like most games, so it's not like that's not the reason I got a 7, that's for sure. Like I just it's just something that I felt like I had to shout out, because I was like, yo, these bears are out of control. Like they're showing up in bandit camps. Like why are these bears working with the bandits to kill me? I do not get it. I'm just so confused.
Really good meat. That's what it is.
At least the Dalgans didn't have the sorcerer, like it was like the big trees that you fought.
You know what? It also might be the fact that my combat encounters took like probably 5 times as long as your guys. Like when I fought a bear, it was like, oh, I better be shooting spells at this bear for 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Like I'm just straight up dodging and attacking him, and his health is going.
At the very end, if I wasn't two-shotting things or one-shotting things, I was annoyed. I was like, what do you mean you get to live with a sliver of health? I like destroyed you with like a 10k crit from this gun. Like you should be gone.
No. As a mage, you have to or on hard mode, you have to lift them in the air using the anti-grav black hole spell, and then shoot them with spells, and then they land on the ground, and then you anti-grav them again, and keep hitting them with spells. Just makes me so long. Max level
do it again. Oh, that sounds fun. That sounds fun. Well, I want New Game Plus and I want DLC. Do you guys like? I beat it. I beat it at I think 43, 44 hours, and I went back and I'm over 50 now. I want more Avowed, and I reviewed it, and that to me is shocking that I want to play it after like reviewing it, making a video, editing it. Like that's a lot of work. I'm not a producer by nature, so that was a lot of work. I want more Avowed. Do you guys want more Avowed, or are you at peace with what you got?
I want more Avowed in the form of Avowed 2, because I think that this game has a lot of cool ideas that I would love to see improved upon in a sequel. I don't have much interest in playing more of this Avowed game. I definitely would not participate in a New Game Plus, but I rarely do that anyway. But a DLC I would welcome. Sequel, I think that's where this has to go, because it's very clear that they have something here, and they could do, if they could improve this and do as they said in the recent Outer Worlds 2 ad, they're better at sequels. And I think that's true of Deadfire. It's true of New Vegas. Like, they're just the sequel company.
What would be the sequel hook? What do you think, Travis?
I say do different place, different totally different story, but just take all of the stuff that you did and just blow it up and make it. I mean, they have.
So we're not going to continue the Envoy story with Sapadal. We're just going to do something completely different. Okay.
Nah, you're spent. Move on to something else. Also, that's what they do in all the Pillar stories so far. They just kind of move.
That's interesting. I would actually love to have them like stay in the Living Lands, give you one character potentially from each zone that you could pick, and you work your way through the world again in a different story from a different perspective, because so many of the cultures were different. Like, you had the aristocrats, you had like the animancers, you had the pirates and the outcasts, and then you had the dwarves kept up in their keep. It's like each one of those groups had a story with a background that I think would have been interesting to have. Like, what is their life if you're like a dwarf and you just wander out in past the, you leave the tusks, and what is your life like? You get to live the Marius story as you come across other people and go from that perspective. Or, you come in on a ship to Thirdborn, you get off the ship and you're greeted with two different ways to go, and you try to see like which way you want to travel to and where you want to grow and learn from there. That was kind of where I was thinking like a sequel would be good, but I definitely think I would rather have a sequel than a new game plus or a DLC. I think I still have so much umbrage with the way like Bethesda and Obsidian games do their dialogue. It's so deadpan to the camera, and I just want them to like running into like a siblings who've just lost their parents to the Dream Thrall or the Dream Scourge, and they're crying, and there's nothing. It's just blank. It kills me. So I'd love for them to actually
Did you actually and when they showed you, did you actually keep your godlike appearance on, or did you turn it off? I turned mine off.
Oh no, you keep that on. You keep that on. You stick your nose in it and see.
No, I turned it off. Right? Here's my sequel pitch. You ready for this, Travis?
So bad.
All right, we're not the Envoy, but we skip some generations. But I don't know how this really would work in Pillar lore. So we come back to the Living Lands, and it's the Industrial Age. But Sapadal's pushing back against the expansion because she doesn't like the trees getting cut down and stuff. So you have to kind of find her, to treat with her, and then like the big battle between Woedica and Sapadal happens. So like then there's like these invading armies from Woedica, and it's like this thing of like the Industrial Age is coming. And I don't know, that's my elevator pitch.
Is it's already a game. It's called Final Fantasy VII.
Well, I was also thinking it's Fable 3, but
it is also Fable 3. You're right, yeah.
But I was like,
Lost thinking like Odyssey. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, well, we got the Industrial Age, which is Fable, but
Yeah, that's funny. I don't have a problem with that pitch. I think that the reason they probably switch continents is because it's really hard to make a continuity in an RPG where you can affect the world and they want to respect your decisions, but. So I don't know if they did a Back to the Living Lands, it would almost have to be a prequel, and then you have to tiptoe around. Well, we can't interact with Rock the Boat too much because we have to set up the game that's going to happen in a bit. I don't know. There's a lot of.
I'd like to see him tell a smaller story, like not in terms of like smaller in terms of I don't know if this is the right way to say it. Smaller in terms of scale, but I want the game and scope to be bigger. Like if we were to arrive and you start the game in a forest and you come across Marius and he said, tells you about something he saw or something, and he takes you away to some new land. But I don't need it to be world changing Woedica Sapadal level impact, but like you could do more in the game in general. Does that make sense? Or am I just
I get where you're coming from, but I do not want this game to be I do not want the sequel to be longer. I'm fine with the scope of what they did with Avowed, but Obsidian games live and die, in my opinion, on that like 20 to 30 hour golden path style. And I think that they could stick to that and just have another successful sequel. I think they just need to refine know like what they have and let like keep like the feature creep down, so we aren't having the situation where it feels like the companion quests was a good idea that didn't get followed through on with every single one of the companions kind of thing.
Fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would want it to. I don't have a problem with it being the same length. I'm not particularly like obsessed with games that are super long, but I do think that they have an opportunity to improve on pretty much every area. Like I have feedback for every part of this game. So like exploration and the respawn situation, enemy variety, the depth with the companions, your decisions mattering more in the game versus after the game, all that stuff. You should not be able to turn off your godlike features. You are all cowards if you do that. Okay. You are godlike with everything that comes with it. Have a tree coming out of your head. All right.
I had like a little bit of
that's okay. You can do that. But if you see my video footage in IGN, you will see I've got it all, man. I'm a freak of nature.
It looked
I'm
like Groot.
scaring people.
I wish you could turn it off
Like
after the patch. Like mine still has them on there, and I want it to be off, but I can't find it in the menu. Wait.
Well, no,
turn
I
it
don't
off.
think you can. It was only something you could do in the character creator. Maybe I would have done it if I knew
I think you
the
can
only
turn
time.
it off. I think there's an option to turn
Maybe
it
there
off
is.
in the middle of the
I can't
game.
find it. Someone
Maybe
in the
I-
comments tell me.
accessibility
You know what?
features in general. But
If I would have known that anytime they would have panned you in conversation, your character would have had the same expression no matter what, I might have kept it on. Right?
Yeah. The deadpan faces are
It's just
very
like-
funny.
Yeah, you just won $1 million.
Thank
Staring there, just dead space. I
Wow,
was like,
that's great.
I am
Yeah.
thrilled.
yeah.
I can't believe you murdered all those people.
What did you guys think about the because as someone new to the pillar stuff, I feel like they threw a ton of terms and lore at you right from the get-go, which was like woo over my head, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't know anything
Thank
about
God
it.
for that compendium though. That thing where you can click X.
Right.
during
I thought that was a
conversation,
really
you can
I've never played
Really-
a game.
More of
see.
that.
Really good.
I never played a game that had that before.
It was
I-
in Final Fantasy 16. And it
Okay,
was
I did
in-
play 16. I guess I just don't remember it.
There's
to
a
be
few
honest.
games that have done that, and I don't know why it's not a standard in the industry because it's super cool.
The issue that I have is a lot of games have like lore tabs or like little notes throughout the world. I appreciated the in the moment contextual aspect of that a
Correct.
lot more than like, oh, you can go read
Yeah.
about the
Yeah.
war that happened in something AI.
The
and then,
go
like,
look it up in the thesaurus is not the correct way.
No.
The hey, it pops up and then you can like click on that button and immediately understand what he's talking about is exactly the right way to do it.
Yeah,
So,
I even had a situation when I was in the middle of a conversation and I had to go answer a phone call and I had to talk to somebody for like 20 minutes and I came back and I'm like, what was this conversation about? It's like, oh yeah, here's the whole thing of the conversation.
Yeah,
I
you can read the
reread.
transcript and then
Yeah.
also all of the terms.
And it was
and
great seeing the terms
Yeah.
highlighted. But man, they threw a lot of stuff at you right away, which I think maybe led to some of my aversion in the beginning because I was just like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know any of this stuff. I almost felt like the game wasn't made for someone like me because it was like, we love our lore here at Obsidian. We're throwing it all at you from minute one. You better get on and
No,
hold on
I
for
think
the ride.
if it was not made for people like you, they wouldn't have included the term feature. in
Yeah, I
it.
guess
You
you're
know what I
right.
mean? It's a tight balance of like, hey, we want this world to feel like it has a lot going on, and like you're not a character who doesn't already understand all this stuff, because that's another pet peeve in RPGs is like somehow your character's existed in this world for 20, 30 years and has no idea about anything, and then they always have to be like, oh, because it's amnesia is like the go-to for JRPGs or Knights of the
Samus
Republic,
always
whatever.
loses her abilities.
Yeah, there's
Samus
always like
always-
something, and so I think the happy medium is your character understands all this, but you as the player don't. And so here's a little menu where you can read up if you need to know, because you don't want the world to feel shallow by not including a bunch of lore and terms to cities and peoples and all that. But yeah, I think they're trying to welcome people into this game, and I think they're realizing that this type of game has a much bigger audience than a Pillars game, and so not everybody's gonna have played those games.
I appreciated that a lot. That was one of the few things that I think as I was going through, I was like, man, there's a lot of pronouns. This is the kind of thing that killed Dune for me. Like, I'm glad that they've got this little glossary here, because even just like the slang that Marius gives you, like even that is like contextualized in the glossary. And I was like, I'm so glad that they did it. I get I get the context of what he's saying, but I'm also really curious like what it is. And that even becomes like a talking point later on. He's like, can you teach me how to speak this? And they're like,
it's like talking to somebody who uses Yiddish words. It's the same thing. Like you kind of get the vibe. You're like, oh yeah. I get what I get what he means, but I would love to look up what that actually means.
Yep. Yeah. Some features like that are very welcomed in games like that with a deep lore that you just don't. And that was the thing that I realized. I was like, oh, this is how I know this game is for anyone, because they've taken into account the years and years of lore and history that they built up that, if you play a game like World of Warcraft, you're not going to get any of that. Like there's no context. There's no understanding of like all the pronouns that they throw at you. There's good luck on learning like the 20 years of just World of Warcraft, let alone the 30 of actual Warcraft and lore. Like I've read so many books, so I get it, but it's insane how they don't have like easy ways to have that kind of context built into dialogue.
There was another personal quirk. I want to know how you guys feel about this, but did anybody else, like after you left party camp, wish there was a way to like turn it to night instead of always having it day? Because I feel like the game looked better at night in every single one of the areas than it did during the day.
Yeah. If you just play long enough without going to camp, it will become night.
Yeah, but you want to go to camp because they want to have the conversations with the stuff, and you got to upgrade your gear. You got to do all these things. It is a weird
little pet peeve, right? And there's no wait button like
I just wanted to play the game at night because I felt the game looked better at night than it did during the day.
That did not occur to me.
Everything looks better at night.
Oh, jeez. That did not occur to me, Rand, until you said it. But you're right, and I do think each of the worlds had a really wonderful like ambiance and element like during the nighttime. But most of what I played was during the day by default because I was respawning out of that camp or something. That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
I just wish that there was a way for me to be able to upgrade my gear without having to go to camp. Like if there was a blacksmith, you just walk over and be like, "Hey, I know you're working right now, but I'm just gonna gotta like upgrade this little pistol. Don't worry about me. I know what I'm doing. Yeah, I just don't want to go to camp right now."
Or even having to go to like sometimes I would go to camp and be like, "Oh, actually don't have enough materials to do it," because because it tells you when you have enough, but if you're saving up some of the lesser materials to upgrade them, you kind of don't know, and so then you show up at camp and find out, damn it, I need one more plant to craft this wand. It doesn't make any sense. But
I did like the fact that the upgrade and crafting system was as simplistic as they made it. Like having like 3 of this turns into 1 of those, and you can break it down without any loss. Was just like, oh, that's good. Thank you. Please don't make this more difficult.
What about one of my buddies had a problem because he felt this was the casualification of RPGs because of the encumbrance, but it didn't matter because you could magically send anything you want to your party stash.
Not actually true. You can only not send stuff that doesn't weigh anything to your party stash. So it's like the trinkets and items, but the armor you can't send to your party stash. You can just break it down.
I sent my armor. I send armor to the party stash all the time.
Yeah, you just tap it.
Yep.
You just press X.
I always broke it down,
like boots and ambulance and stuff. But like the stuff that weighs things, the option was never there for me.
No, you could. I sent all that stuff. I only kept to kept my low. I only kept the armor I was wearing and the armor I transmogrified it as. And every time I got new armor, if it was common, I'd break it down. But if it was unique, I'd send it to the camp.
The stuff we did. I broke down the unique stuff too. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
so you can send anything to the camp.
Yeah, I hate encumbrance in games, so I have absolutely no complaints about this. Encumbrance is a stupid mechanic. I don't.
My buddy's complaint was that it was too casual.
Oh well,
he wanted like hardcore. Like
if more people can't play it, it's not a good game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously,
that let me enjoy it versus something like what's the other Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is like the very like. That's why I could enjoy Avowed. I think that's what they were aiming for versus something that's very I don't know what the right word. What's the very different RPGs, right? You can't compare them, but
people will compare them, Luke. What are you talking about?
Well, those people are silly.
A medieval RPG versus a fantasy RPG. People are going to compare them.
I don't understand those people, but here we are. I get it.
Yeah.
I liked the casual approach to it, especially with it being my first Obsidian game, but that is me, like that's, and I tried to be clear about that when I talked about the game.
I think
I'm
it takes
curious-
all types. I like that there's a Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which is the most unapproachable, dorky RPG ever. And I like that there's RPGs you can just pick up and turn your brain off. And I think if they're blaming Obsidian for the casualification of RPGs, they're a couple decades late and they're looking at the wrong developer. But go off, King.
Mm.
I'm happy with the casual nature of Avowed. I think it's an approachable way for people to get into Western RPGs without having you stick with something for more than 100 hours if you don't want to. You can easily finish the game in 30 to 40 hours, as most reviews I think took around that time, and still get a really good enjoyment out of it. The quality of life features, I think, are things that Bethesda really needs to pick up on, because there were issues that I was having with Starfield that I was genuinely happy to see fixed and remedied in Avowed. And I was like, yes, I'm playing a video game. I know that what I'm doing is stealing. Yes, most of the people are starving. Am I going to walk around and pick up all the little stew? Yes, I will. Do I care? No, because it's a freaking video game. I just want to go play and I want to have enough food. I don't care if I have 300 ways of eating food in my inventory right now. It doesn't weigh anything. So I'm fine with those, because I think that they are one more thing on top of a system that takes away from what the overall aspect of the game was for me, which was story, combat, exploration. Those were the three things that I enjoyed the most. The more I could get to those and the less I had to worry about everything else was a boon in my mind.
It's funny you mentioned Starfield. I know we're going to start closing out here though, guys, but Starfield, Avowed, Cyberpunk, Diablo, Kingdom Come, like all of these are RPGs, but they're so fundamentally different in the way they're approached. I'm really glad Avowed exists the way it does. I think my highest compliments for Obsidian was the scale and scope and not trying to take on too much, and that everything I felt that I enjoyed here felt handcrafted. And I go back to what we talked about at the very beginning, discovery, like behind the waterfall, up the ledge, underneath the tree, like always something cool there, whether I used it or not. I felt like I was rewarded for my time looking around.
Yeah, I really appreciated that. It was amazing to have that aspect of it again. It's something that I lamented about not feeling when I was going through like Breath of the Wild, and compared to like Tears of the Kingdom instead of Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
You know, for me, Avowed's biggest weakness that I felt, because I think like you, Luke, I love the exploration and combat so much, which I think I got across in my video pretty well. I just was not moved at all by the story. I never at all during any point of the game did I wonder about what would happen next. Did I feel compelled to, like, all right, I'm done exploring and to pick up the next main quest thread at all, like ever? And it wasn't like, and this is, well, obviously we'll have different opinions, but there was in stark contrast to Starfield because of how much I loved the main story and the faction quest lines, where I was constantly thinking about, like, you know, when that other faction shows up in Starfield, I don't want to spoil it for anybody. I was just like, oh my God. And maybe it's because I'm a sci-fi nut, but it really spoke to me in a way that this story didn't, where I was like having so much fun just exploring the game for myself that at no point in time was I like, well, I want to get back to the story to see what's going on with Sappy, or I want to see what Ludwin's up to. It didn't excite me. So anytime I was sort of done with all the side quests and exploration, I was like, well, I guess the only thing left to do.
Time to take your vitamins. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think that's pretty common in RPGs. A lot of people feel the exact same way about like Skyrim and, you know, Elder Scrolls games. And I think it's pretty common to be like tepid about the main quest, because a lot of people feel that the main meat of RPGs is you telling your own stories and goofing off and doing random stuff. I will agree that the faction quests are certainly draws in Starfield, though I would say the main story probably wasn't for me.
yeah,
but
because I just thought to myself, man, if you could combine a game with, well, for me, because I know Travis is different, but if you can combine like Starfield's main quest and faction stuff with the exploration that Avowed has in the combat, got 10 out of 10 game, baby. IGN 10 out of 10, ring it up. Metacritic super high now. So
you combine 2 7 out of 10s, you get a 10 out of 10. That's what I'm learning from this. No, I think they have a lot to improve, and I do think the story is not the best Obsidian story, especially for their pedigree. I kind of hold them at a pretty high standard because they have great writers. Shout out to Josh Sawyer. But I do think they got a lot of the things that they needed to get right. Like, I think the dialogue is very good. I think the characters are good. I think they got all the major beats. I just think they showed their hand a little bit too early, and they really leaned on these reveals that were not reveals really at all. They were pretty obvious from the beginning from anybody who's played a video game before.
Any final thoughts? I feel like we did kind of do a comfortable wrap up in that, but I want to open the door for anyone before we do bow out here. Any final thoughts, things that you want to say, point people towards to just process through in their experience with Avowed?
Buy lock picks every time. Every
Good
time you get an
advice, yes.
opportunity, buy lock picks. You will never go wrong.
Yeah, that's a very good bit of advice. Very good bit of advice. Use those treasure maps. They have cool uniques. That's a good bit of advice. I like that.
Especially the
Don't
one
play
with
the game
cod piece.
longer than you're enjoying it.
Yes.
That's my advice for all games.
Totem pieces also are
Totems, yeah.
give you some really cool passives.
Yep.
There's also a really good someone somewhere in the zone will always sell you something to help you find those.
Yeah, it's a good
I
point.
also feel like Obsidian did a mage build pretty awesome. Like the spells and the first person animation of like drawing like the blizzard or the fire and stuff. Like, I think that was spectacular. And I like it because I switched between third person and first, and I was a wizard, and I felt like I lost something in the transition between first and third regarding that. So I went back to first, and it was so much better in first person as a wizard in combat than it would be in third. I don't know which way you guys played the game, if it was third or first, but I thought like the game was built around the first person animations, so that's sort of what I kept it at.
I was the majority first person as well. I explored both, enjoyed both, but ultimately I preferred the combat and the exploration in first. And they would say otherwise, but I felt like it was designed for first person, you know?
I think it was clearly designed but Travis, do you disagree? It looks like you kind of disagree on this one.
Which one?
About like the first person versus third person. Like the game seemed like was clearly designed in first.
Oh yeah. I turned the third person on for about 10 seconds and went, no, and turned it back. I like that it's there for the people who like it, but I've never understood. I have the same problem with Skyrim and a lot of these open world RPGs that add a third person mode. That it always feels to me like the first person was the intention. But I also don't really give it much of a try because when I play an RPG, if first person is an option and it's executed well, I pretty much always prefer that.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in first person most of the time. I mean, I'm known for being in Sea of Thieves all the time. So for me, first person is where I live my experiences. It's where I think you look the most normal, because I think there's something to be said about watching you in third person kind of half react with your body to doing stuff in the game. And that's always kind of weird. So I usually just stuck with first person. I thought that was the better way to go about it. But yeah, I think they did a really good job with all I was surprised at some of the special attacks, that weapons that I wasn't expecting something like some cool animation to have. Some of those were really, really well done in first person.
Well, guys, I think I want to thank you for joining me tonight. And I hope that anybody that found this episode, whether you watched it live with us or you found it later on, enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed your time with Avowed, because you spent time with Avowed. I will say very clearly, I really do love this game. I had a blast reviewing this game, covering this game. I was privileged to interview Carrie Patel, which I'll point people towards. But I had a good time with this, with Avowed overall, and I'm hopeful that other people enjoy it also. Rand, closing thoughts from you, my friend, and point people towards your socials.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me on. It's cool to talk Avowed without spoilers, really. because in my review, I just laid out the story of, and I don't like spoiling anybody. So I was just like, you're an envoy, there's a problem, you're sent there, and you got to figure it out. You know, I want people to experience something the way I experienced it. But it is nice to kind of go in depth and get everybody's opinions on stuff, especially in a game like this where people's playthroughs could be different. You know, it's not like we're all playing a God of War game where it was just like everybody's thing ended up the exact same. So it's super cool to, you know, talk to Logan and you, Luke, and Travis about your experiences in the game. But yeah, if you want to check out my stuff, it's on youtube.com/Rand al Thor 19. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, it was an absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Travis, you work for a small outlet.
Yes, you can find my stuff on IGN.com, Indie Outlet, and you can follow me on social. I'm on all the socials as Tie Guy Travis. Thanks for having me. Always nice to talk to you, Rando. Always nice to talk to you, Luke. Logan.
As we're kind of closing out, I want to thank you guys for joining us. It's always a pleasure to get to engage with your guys' content, even if it's just kind of lurking around. So it's always nice to kind of hear your guys' opinions, even though we don't ever get to really like have these kind of sessions and stuff on the regular. So if there's ever an opportunity where we could do this again, would love to have you guys back and jump in for another spoiler cast or just roundtable discussions about games and stuff in the future. So thank you for coming. For me, just keep an eye on XEP. Keelhault is still going strong. I think I just put out my last episode before to like cap off the 7th year of doing Sea of Thieves podcasting. So next week's episode will be starting into my 8th year, I think.
Wow.
I think it's how it works.
Congratulations.
So just 355 just came out today. So happy about that.
Is it a good game or?
It's you know, I guess if you have time, if you have time, you could check it out. It's all right.
It's one of the games of all time.
I think it's an 8 now. I think you reviewed it as an 8.
Yeah. I would say based on what I've played, I think that's fair. I think it's a really good game. I was addicted to that game for a while, but I just didn't have time for it. You can only play like 1 or 2 live service games max, and then you have to give one up.
Or you'd be like me and just cycle through all of them, getting the season passes done, and then just completely cut them off when you're done, and then try and figure out when you're going to be playing a single player game.
Alrighty, guys. Oh, I'm sorry, Travis. I cut you off.
No, I was saying that lifestyle makes me afraid. That's all I have to say.
Alrighty, guys. That is going to be it from us. Thank you all for watching, for supporting, etc. I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your week. Take care.